Audio test.
Test, test,
Gotcha. We gotcha.
test, test, test.
Perfect.
Okay, everyone. Good morning. I'm Dan Garodnick, Chair of the City Planning Commission and Director of the Department of City Planning. Welcome to today's public meeting of June 26, 2024. I want to thank Vice Chair Knuckles for his assistance today in the public testimony portion of the meeting. I am multitasking today. We have a fairly busy agenda this morning, starting with a series of votes for proposals from throughout the city, to be followed by multiple public hearings on sites in Brooklyn, Manhattan, and Queens. We're going to start off with a vote on the Bronx Metro North Station Area Plan, which would complement new Metro North stations coming to the East Bronx neighborhoods of Parkchester, Van Ness, Morris Park, Hunts Point, and Co-op City, with thousands of new homes and jobs. I'm going to have more to say about that one during our vote. Next up, we're going to vote on a proposed commercial building that would include around 2 acres of public waterfront open space at 500 Kent Avenue in Williamsburg, Brooklyn. The site sits near the Brooklyn Navy Yard, Roberto Clemente Ball Field, Jacob's Ladder Playground, the New York City Ferry, and the B62 and B67 bus lines. Staying in Brooklyn, but moving over to Sheepshead Bay, we will be voting next on a mixed-use building at 3033 Avenue V that includes nearly 110 new homes, of which around 30 would be income restricted, as well as ground floor retail. The project is a short walk from Marine Park and several bus lines. Our last Brooklyn vote for today is on 197 Berry Street in Williamsburg. The proposal looks to convert around 100 subgrade parking spaces in this existing mixed-use building into roughly 300 self-storage units. Moving to Manhattan, the commission will vote on a new 7-space automated parking facility in an existing 10-unit residential development at 601 Washington Street in Tribeca. Our final votes for today are centered on individual home authorizations or certifications on Staten Island. We'll vote on an authorization to enlarge a 2-family home at 125 Rockland Avenue in Egbertville, an enlargement to a single-family home and alterations to the pool at 255 Benedict Road in Tote Hill, and a renewal of zoning authorizations to build a detached single-family home at 50 and 54 Cedar Cliff Road in Grimes Hill. On to the public hearings for today. We're going to begin with a hearing on 3117 12th Street in Astoria. This residential development would include 35 homes, nearly 10 of them income restricted. It would be located close to Socrates Sculpture Park and the Noguchi Museum. Next, the public is welcome to testify on 150 Mill Street. This new commercial building proposed for Red Hook, Brooklyn would include offices, ambulatory diagnostic uses, and retail, including a supermarket. The site is near Red Hook Park, several bus stops, and the F&G trains at Smith 9th Street Station. That hearing will be followed by 250 86th Street in Bay Ridge, a proposal to legalize a two-story mixed residential and community facility, a building containing a medical office. The project would also map mandatory inclusionary housing to guarantee permanently affordable homes in the case of future development here or in the rezoning area. Last hearing for today concerns Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center and their plan to facilitate a new hospital building with a pedestrian bridge over 67th Street within the footprint of their existing campus at 1233 York Avenue in Lenox Hill, Manhattan. So, a lot to do today. Thanks everybody for your participation, and to members of the public for joining us. And with that, Madam Secretary, take it away.
Good morning. Good morning. This is City Planning Commission public meeting held remotely through the NYC Engage portal and in person in the CPC hearing room 120 Broadway, Lower Concourse. Today is Wednesday, June 26, 2024. I will now call the roll. I think we're having the issue where the mic appears red, but the audio's, we'll check those mics in a little bit. I will now call the roll. Chair Garodnick is on Zoom. Vice Chair Knuckles? Here. Note here. Commissioner Benjamin? Present. Present. Okay. Let's pause real quick to address the, okay. I think we're having an audio issue real quick in the room. We'll get the replacement mics real quick and we'll divvy those out. It takes like 2 minutes. Okay. That's okay? Yep. Okay.
See what happens when the chair is away.
He did this deliberately.
I mean, and talk about degree of difficulty.
You're gone.
Zoom, and the mics are off.
And you're gone? Oh, you're back.
But if he's hearing us, that means our mics are active.
I can hear you all clearly.
Watch yourselves is what we're saying.
Oh.
They're on now.
All right.
The lights are off, but
Lights.
mics are working.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Let's try that
The
again.
audio issue has resolved. Okay.
You want to try it again?
Vice Chair Knuckles?
Here.
Commissioner Benjamin? Present. Commissioner Thurlow?
Here.
Commissioner Krause?
Present.
Commissioner Dewitt?
Here.
Commissioner Gold, I believe, is on Zoom.
Yes, present. Thank you.
Commissioner Goodridge?
Here.
Commissioner Kamani? Here. Commissioner Marin?
Here.
Commissioner Osorio?
Here.
Commissioner Ramprashad?
Here.
A quorum is present. The first item is the approval of the minutes of the public meeting of Wednesday, June 12th, 2024.
Thank you. On the minutes, I make a motion to approve the minutes. Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Thank you very much. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Okay, minutes are approved.
Scheduling. Calendar number 1. We have resolutions for adoption scheduling Wednesday, July 10th, 2024 for a public hearing to be held in person in the CPC hearing room, 120 Broadway, and remotely through the NYC Engage portal.
Okay, on the resolutions, I make a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Benjamin. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Okay, resolution's adopted.
Setting the hearing. Setting the hearing.
Okay. The next part of the calendar is the report section on page 5. We'll go to the votes. Borough of the Bronx. Calendar numbers 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Bronx Metro North Station Area. CDs 9, 10, and 11. Calendar number 2. C 240015 ZMX. Calendar number 3, N240016ZRX. Calendar number 4, C240157MMX. Calendar number 5, C240158MMX. Calendar number 6, C240159MMX. Calendar number 7, C240160MMX. Calendar number 8, C240163MMX. In the matter of applications for a zoning map and zoning text amendments and city map amendments concerning Bronx Metro North Station area. For favorable reports as modified on calendar numbers 2 and 3, and for favorable reports on calendar numbers 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Chair Garodnick.
Thank you very much, Madam Secretary. And before casting my vote, I just want to take a moment here to speak about how truly transformative this Bronx Metro North Station area plan will be for the neighborhoods of Parkchester, Van Nest, Morris Park, Hunts Point, and Co-op City, as well as for the city and the broader region. It's not every day that we see a new train station open, and it's even rarer to get 4 new ones at once. And in an area of the city that for 100 years has had no regional rail service. This is truly a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to complement this transit improvement with much-needed homes, jobs, and public amenities. Set to open in 2027, these new stations will significantly cut down on commute times and help to connect residents to tens of thousands of jobs throughout the Bronx, Manhattan, Westchester, and Connecticut. And it is not lost on me that I am sitting here in the MTA board headquarters in the middle of an MTA board meeting as I am with you all for the City Planning Commission, which is the reason that I am, at least for the moment, not able to be there a few blocks away. So an important initiative for this Bronx and for the city. And the Department of City Planning's proposal was crafted through 6 years of extensive community outreach to make sure that our land use policies take advantage of these new stations and ensure that those who live and work in these neighborhoods are the ones who benefit the most. If approved, this community-informed plan will lead to the creation of around 7,500 new homes and 10,000 new jobs. Regarding the former, that number includes nearly 2,000 permanently income-restricted affordable homes, thanks to mandatory inclusionary housing. That's enough affordable homes for over 4,000 New Yorkers, a number that will make a big difference in tackling our housing crisis. As for jobs, the plan will bolster key commercial corridors, establish workforce training programs, and support vital community institutions and job centers, especially those found in Morris Park and Hunts Point, 2 of the city's largest job centers. We're also making sure that these new stations, homes, and jobs come with the enhanced infrastructure needed to support these neighborhoods. Pedestrian-friendly public amenities such as new plazas, safer pedestrian crossings, and expanded sidewalk space will make it easier for residents and workers to access the new stations, foster a stronger sense of community, and improve the overall quality of life in these neighborhoods. The plan received positive recommendations from Bronx Borough President Vanessa Gibson, the Bronx Borough Board, and Community Boards 9 and 11. I thank them deeply for their support. I would also like to express my appreciation to council members Rafael Salamanca, Amanda Farias, Kevin Riley, and Christy Marmorato for their leadership, and to the East Bronx community for their input and comments throughout this public review process. Finally, I want to thank everyone involved at the Department of City Planning for getting us to this moment. This was truly an extraordinary team effort. We would not have gotten to today without the tireless work of our capital planning team, the community planning and civic engagement team, the economic development and regional planning team, environmental assessment and review, our housing division, planning support, strategic planning, technical review, transportation, urban design, zoning, council's office, communications, intergovernmental affairs, and, of course, our all-star Bronx team led by Paul Phillips and Alexandra Patty Diaz. I'd like to especially thank our project lead, Michael Cavalar, for his years of dedication, his unwavering enthusiasm and professionalism, and his planning acumen in bringing this vision to life. So an exciting day for the Bronx and for the city. And with that, I happily and enthusiastically vote aye.
Vice Chair Knuckles.
I concur with the chair with regard to the remarks that he's made, especially with regard to the Bronx office. I enthusiastically vote yes.
Commissioner Benjamin.
Yes.
Commissioner Cerullo.
Yeah, sharing the remarks of both the chair and the vice chair. Happily vote yes.
Commissioner Kraut.
Similarly, I concur with the remarks of the chair and just want to add my congratulations to the Bronx office. It's been an extraordinary amount of work they put into this, and one of the most impressive projects since my time on the commission, and I'm deeply appreciative for the professionalism they brought to this. Yes.
Commissioner Doak.
I gladly vote yes.
Commissioner Gold.
I echo the comments of the chair and the vice chair and vote yes as well.
Commissioner Goodrich.
So I will thank the staff and thank everyone for the tireless work on this project. It has been a long time coming, and so I wanted to start with that. The second thing is, when I heard of this project, the first thing I thought about when I saw the details was that 2 years ago, in the middle of the night, I got a call that I'll always remember, which was that a Bronx building had been on fire. And as people who work in the borough and who knew many tenants, we probably knew people in that building, so start calling, and sure enough, we did. I learned a lot about the Bronx from working in the Bronx and working with many tenants, and a lot of the history. And some of that history, for example, is in a few weeks. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention it. The Young Lords actually took over Lincoln Hospital and fought for a better borough. And so when I think of the future of the Bronx, which is the vote today, I also think of its history. And one of the things I think about is, will all of the people who have fought to make the Bronx what it is and have fought to transform it benefit from the actions that we vote on? And I think for this vote, for the, transit access, of course, for the Metro North, although I have already expressed my misgivings about bringing transit access, but not a reduced fare as of yet. I know that the city ticket is a possibility, but I'm really thankful for the former Bronx Borough President's testimony that highlighted that a lot of people would gladly pay, an extra fare for less travel. And so if the proposal were just about the Metro North, I would gladly vote yes. But in fact, the proposal also includes housing, which will be a little over 7,500 housing units, but only about 1,900 of them being permanently affordable. The New York Times recently published an article that showed that in Mott Haven, the rent is higher than in both Harlem and Astoria, which shows that the area has been gentrified. A lot of people are being pushed out, and although the Bronx has long been thought of as the last bastion of affordable housing, it slowly has become not that. And I think that if we are voting and if we are private parties, like if this were Goldman Sachs or another private entity and we wanted to vote for privatization of housing, that would be fine. But since we are the city, we should be including and we should fight for more affordable housing, especially in a borough that direly needs it in comparison to, other boroughs that have lost the fight long for gentrification. So for that reason, I am voting no. As many of you know, I've spent many years as a housing rights attorney. I see the actual impact. I post often about Housing Connect and the affordable apartments available, and I often get laughed at that the actual affordable apartments are the same as market rent, are not enough. And so for me, it has been a real journey into what I am approving. And if we are going to approve one of the largest projects that will allow housing, and we're the city, I think that it should be much more than just 25% of permanently affordable units. So my vote is no.
Commissioner Kermani.
Yes, thank you, and thank you to all my fellow commissioners for their thoughtful responses. I vote yes, enthusiastically, with deep thanks and gratitude, and just like blown away by the work of the Bronx Borough Office. And I hope you feel so good about this. And I think as we know, housing and transit are inextricably linked all the time, but are often not planned together. And so to see that happen with kind of the deep conversations with community and in community that will need to continue as this project moves forward. We know that it's not a one-time thing. It's one thing to get the plan done and get it moving, but then we know things happen and things are iterative and change. But I think, as Commissioner Crowell said, this is like incredibly impressive and unbelievably important for our city and for the Bronx. Thank you.
Commissioner Marin, recused.
I am recused. I am recused due to current employment, but I do want to make a statement, and that is that I'm very grateful to the team at all the teams at Department of City Planning, the Bronx office who did the shepherding, through Michael Cavalla, who's worked endlessly on this. And I specifically want to note that the prior to my employment and my recusal, the Bronx office was very instrumental in making sure that every aspect of that proposal was understood by each one of the commissioners. And of course, everyone was supported. But again, I am recused. Thank you.
Commissioner Osorio.
In voting yes, I want to concur with what has been said and specifically highlight the important work of the Bronx office. But I want to recommend adjustments to the report discussing the infrastructure improvements to address climate change impacts on pedestrian infrastructure that have been brought up throughout the review process, to make sure that the infrastructure is there to accommodate the proposed increases in density. And second, as this proposal keeps evolving, I want to underline what Commissioner Goodrich said and state that we dramatically need to increase the percentage of affordable housing around the stations. We need more affordable housing, not just more housing. Of course, this is a larger debate, one that I look forward to engaging as the Commission begins discussing the City of Yes for housing opportunity. Thank you.
Mr. Ramprashad.
I too would like to thank the Bronx Borough Office for the great work they've done on this, and I vote yes.
Favorable reports as modified have been adopted on calendar numbers 2 and 3, and favorable reports have been adopted on calendar numbers 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Borough Brooklyn, calendar numbers 9, 10, and 11, 500 Kent Avenue, CD2, calendar number 9, C230293 ZMK, calendar number 10, C230294 ZSK, calendar number 11, C230296 ZSK. And the matter of applications for a zoning map amendment and special permits concerning 500 Kent Avenue. For favorable reports on calendar numbers 9, 10, and 11, Chair Garodnick.
Aye.
Vice Chair Knuckles.
Yes.
Commissioner Benjamin.
I am voting no on this item. I don't feel that we've really seen that there's a market here for office uses. So a large-scale office use in what has been a manufacturing area is problematic, particularly as part of the IBZ. And I don't see the evidence that says this is an appropriate rezoning, so I vote no.
Commissioner Cerullo.
Yes.
Commissioner Crowell.
Yes.
Commissioner Dewick.
Yes.
Commissioner Gold.
Yes.
Commissioner Goodrich.
No, I share the Brooklyn Borough President's concerns about approving a commercial project in a manufacturing district, and I'll leave it at that.
Commissioner Kermani.
Yes.
Commissioner Marin.
Yes.
Commissioner Osorio.
I vote no on this proposal. I respectfully do not agree with the department on the land use rationale. My vote also underscores the concerns of the Brooklyn Borough President regarding land use decisions that continue to erode manufacturing in New York City. a redevelopment proposal inside an industrial business zone and inside a significant maritime and industrial area without any industrial uses contradicts city policy that promotes an industrial working waterfront in both the comprehensive waterfront plan and the waterfront revitalization program.
Commissioner Ramprashad.
Yes.
Favorable reports have been adopted on calendar numbers 9, 10, and 11. Borough Brooklyn, calendar numbers 12 and 13. 3033 Avenue V rezoning, CD 15, calendar number 12, C240131 ZMK. Calendar number 13, N 240132 ZRK, in the matter of applications for a zoning map and zoning text amendments concerning 3033 Avenue V rezoning. For favorable reports on calendar numbers 12 and 13, Chair Grodnick.
Aye.
Vice Chair Knuckles.
Yes.
Commissioner Benjamin.
Aye.
Commissioner Cerullo.
Yes.
Commissioner Crowell.
Yes.
Commissioner Dueck.
Yes.
Commissioner Gold.
Yes.
Commissioner Goodrich.
Yes.
Commissioner Kamani.
Yes.
Commissioner Marin.
Yes.
Commissioner Osorio.
Yes.
Commissioner Ramprashad.
Yes.
Favorable reports have been adopted on calendar numbers 12 and 13. Borough Brooklyn, calendar number 14, 197 Berry Street rezoning, CD1, C2400Z72 ZMK, in the matter of an application for a zoning map amendment concerning 197 Berry Street rezoning. For a favorable report on calendar number 14, Chair Grodnick.
Aye.
Vice Chair Knuckles.
Yes.
Commissioner Benjamin.
Aye.
Commissioner Cerullo.
Yes.
Commissioner Crowell.
Yes.
Commissioner Dueck.
Yes.
Commissioner Gold.
Yes.
Commissioner Goodrich.
Yes.
Commissioner Kamani.
Yes.
Commissioner Marin.
Yes.
Commissioner Osorio.
Yes.
Commissioner Ramprashad.
Yes.
A favorable report has been adopted on calendar number 14. Borough Manhattan, calendar number 15, 601 Washington Street Parking Authorization, CD2, N240192ZAM, and the matter of an application for the grant of an authorization concerning 601 Washington Street Parking Authorization for the adoption of calendar number 15. Chair Grodnick.
Aye.
Vice Chair Knuckles.
Yes.
Commissioner Benjamin.
Aye.
Commissioner Cerullo.
Yes.
Commissioner Crowell.
Yes.
Commissioner Dueck.
Yes.
Commissioner Gold.
Yes.
Commissioner Goodrich.
Yes.
Commissioner Kamani.
Yes.
Commissioner Marin.
Yes.
Commissioner Osorio.
I vote no. I respectfully disagree with the department's position. I do not think that the proposal warrants building unrequired parking in the Manhattan core on the ground floor. I think that in order to achieve the city's climate goals, we need to disincentivize the construction of unrequired parking, particularly in such proximity to public transit. Thank you.
Commissioner Ramprashad.
Yes.
Calendar number 15 has been adopted. Borough of Staten Island, calendar number 16, 125 Rockland Avenue, CD2, N230222ZAR, in the matter of an application for the grant of an authorization concerning 125 Rockland Avenue. For the adoption of calendar number 16, Chair Grodnick.
Aye.
Vice Chair Knuckles.
Yes.
Commissioner Benjamin.
Aye.
Commissioner Cerullo.
Yes.
Commissioner Crowell.
Yes.
Commissioner Dueck.
Yes.
Commissioner Gold.
Yes.
Commissioner Goodrich.
Yes.
Commissioner Kamani.
Yes.
Commissioner Marin.
Yes.
Commissioner Osorio.
Yes.
Commissioner Ramprashad.
Yes.
Calendar number 16 has been adopted. Borough of Staten Island, calendar number 17, 255 Benedict Road, CD2, N240306VCR, in the matter of an application for the grant of a certification concerning 255 Benedict Road, for the adoption of calendar number 17. Chair Grodnick.
Aye.
Vice Chair Knuckles.
Yes.
Commissioner Benjamin.
Aye.
Commissioner Cerullo.
Yes.
Commissioner Crowell.
Yes.
Commissioner Dueck.
Yes.
Commissioner Gold.
Yes.
Commissioner Goodrich.
Yes.
Commissioner Kamani.
Yes.
Commissioner Marin.
Yes.
Commissioner Osorio.
Yes.
Commissioner Ramprashad.
Yes.
Calendar number 17 has been adopted. Borough of Staten Island, calendar number 18, our last vote item, 50 and 54 Cedar Cliff Road renewal, CD1, N240277CMR, and the matter of an application for the grant of renewal of previously approved authorizations concerning 50 and 54 Cedar Cliff Road renewal. For the adoption of calendar number 18, Chair Grodnick.
Aye.
Vice Chair Knuckles.
Yes.
Commissioner Benjamin.
Aye.
Commissioner Cerullo.
Yes.
Commissioner Crowell.
Yes.
Commissioner Dueck.
Yes.
Commissioner Gold.
Yes.
Commissioner Goodrich.
Yes.
Commissioner Kamani.
Yes.
Commissioner Marin.
Yes.
Commissioner Osorio.
Yes.
Commissioner Ramprashad.
Yes.
Calendar number 18 has been adopted. The next part of the calendar is the public hearing section on page 9.
Great. I am going to turn it over to the Vice Chairman. Thank you, Vice Chair Knuckles, for taking over the public hearing portion of this meeting. I appreciate it very much.
Thank you. I'm sorry, Commissioner Benjamin?
Yeah, I just have a question. When the reports are written and there are no votes, is there anything that goes into the report about why people voted no, or does it just list the people who voted yes and the people who voted no?
I cannot answer that question. And,
I
council
believe,
is in,
for the
in
ones
room.
that do have reports, we do list who votes no, who abstains. We list recusals. We
I don't
do
think there's
incorporate
an elaboration.
some discussion that happens at the commission. I could get an answer on that.
Okay, because it wouldn't have been in because we hadn't voted before, so I just wanted to make sure there was something that said why people voted no.
Let me get clarification on that. I can ask counsel's office. Okay, an answer for that.
All righty. We'll move to the public hearings. Madam Secretary, you want to call the item?
Borough of Queens, calendar numbers 19 and 20, 3117 12th Street rezoning, CD1. Calendar number 19, C230022ZMQ. Calendar number 20, N230023ZRQ. Public hearing and the matter of applications for a zoning map and zoning text amendments concerning 3117 12th Street rezoning.
All right.
And I'll just note on this one, we have one speaker, Frank Chaney, who will present for 3 minutes.
All righty.
Vice Chair, Commissioners.
Good morning.
Good morning.
This is the...
And that's the screen. Use it for.
Okay. My name is Frank Chaney. I'm the zoning attorney for the owner and applicant, and I'm joined here by Dimitris Drogidas, the owner's rep, and online by Gino Longo, the architect for the project, and we'll all be available to answer questions at the end of the presentation if you have any. The application, as said, is for 2 actions. The first is to amend the zoning map to rezone a small portion of an existing R5B district, R6B, and the second action is a text amendment to Appendix F of the zoning resolution to designate the rezoning area for mandatory inclusionary housing. The rezoning will extend the R6B zoning district directly to the north down to 31st Drive, covering the southwest portion of the block to a depth of 150 feet from 12th Street. In addition to the development site, which is Lot 13, the rezoning will include 8 other lots and small slivers of 2 lots, which under the split lot rules would be unaffected by the rezoning. The text amendment will designate the rezoned area, shown here on the right, outlined in red, as a mandatory inclusionary housing area subject to MIH Option 1. Within the surrounding area, the predominant land use is residential, with scattering of industrial use, institutional uses, which are blue, and light industrial uses, purple. And the rezoning in the area is a mix of R5B, R6B, and R7A. The predominant residential building type in the area ranges from 2- and 3-story detached, semi-detached, and attached houses in the R5B districts to 6- and 9-story apartment buildings in the R7A district to the south and the west. The site is currently occupied by 5 buildings, one of which is a 2-story, 2-family house. The other 4 are single-story commercial buildings, 3 garages, and 1 business, a window display business. Altogether, the 5 buildings total 5,826 square feet of total floor area at an FAR 0.48. As you can see, the site is substantially underutilized. The proposed rezoning will change a portion of an existing R5B district to R6B, which will increase the FAR from 1.35 to 2.2, and increase the maximum building height from 33 feet without a setback to 55 feet after a 15-foot setback above a maximum 45-foot high base. The proposed rezoning will enable development of a 5-story residential building consisting of a 4-story base, 43 feet high, and a 5th floor set back 15 feet from the street, a narrow street, having a total building height of 53 feet. The building will contain 35 dwelling units in 26,550 square feet of floor area and will have an FAR of 2.2, the maximum allowed by the rezoning.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Channing. Let me just ask before I open it up for questions. The ground floor, is that going to be retail?
No, it's a commercial, it's a residential zoning district, no commercial uses.
No commercial?
Right.
So that will be, those windows will be residential units on the ground floor?
Correct.
Okay.
The archway that you see on the left will be the entrance through Building Drive to the parking spaces at the rear. I can just show you that. Parking spaces in the rear with some landscaped area.
Okay. Thank you. Questions, Commissioner Benjamin?
One quick question, Frank. Good to see you. Could that first floor be professional apartments, community facilities?
It could be, but it's not, we're not proposing that.
Okay.
Other questions? Being none. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Have a great day, everybody.
Thank you.
If there are no further speakers on this item, then we will close the hearing. Thank you.
Borough Brooklyn, calendar number 21, 150 Mill Street rezoning, CD6 C220080ZMK. Public hearing on the matter of an application for a zoning map amendment concerning 150 Mill Street. I'll note on this item, we are going to have a team presentation for 10 minutes, consisting of Kevin Williams, Richard Lobel, and Nicholas Liberis?
Liberis.
Liberis.
Yep.
Apologies.
Okay. You've been here before, Mr. Lobel.
I have, Vice Chair, yes, several times.
You can proceed accordingly. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair, Chair, Commissioners, Richard Lobel of Sheldon Lobel PC. Pleased to be before you representing the 150 Mill Street rezoning. So this is a rezoning which proposes a zoning map amendment from an existing M11 district to an M15 district within the Red Hook neighborhood of Brooklyn Community Board 6. This would consist of Block 552. There would be roughly 9 to 10 lots, including the rezoning area. However, of these, there's really only 4 zoning lots, including the applicant's site. This zoning map amendment would facilitate the development of 150 Mill with an approximately 64,000 10-story mixed-use commercial, light manufacturing, community facility building, inclusive of a supermarket on the ground floor, light manufacturing, and community space on the second floor, ambulatory diagnostic uses on the 4th floor, and offices on the remaining floors. As we're happy to talk about during the presentation, this is inclusive of many of the thoughts and hopes of the surrounding area and community stakeholders in determining the appropriate uses for this building. What are those community stakeholders interested in? The first is a supermarket. This area is underserved by supermarkets. The local tenants associations were quite excited about the prospect of a ground floor user for the supermarket, which we've already identified with a letter of intent. There is community space for local nonprofits included on the second story of the building. There's light industrial space to provide for light manufacturing, particularly important given the residential area to the west and south of the site, which we can talk about a little bit more when we look at the maps. In addition to which, there'll be maker space to allow for more creative and entrepreneurial endeavors, as well as job training, another important goal of the local tenants associations to allow for members and tenants within the Red Hook houses located nearby to have job training and the opportunity to create opportunities for them as well. This is the rezoning area circled. You will note on this map, which we have bifurcated, this is the lower left portion of the map. We are, again, adjacent to an R5 district, including on our block. To the west of the property, you can see that vast R5, which includes the Red Hook houses. To the east and southeast of the site, as well as slightly to the northeast, There are existing M districts. The area is somewhat dominated by the Gowanus Expressway running adjacent to the site. And also, I would say that allowing for an additional bulk at this site to allow for the building to rise to 10 stories and get some space above the Gowanus was one of the goals of the project. This is the rezoning area. Again, while there are some portions of lots included towards the west of the rezoning area itself, you can see the area in red. That's the development site, roughly 9,900 square feet, which would be where the subject building would be located. There are two other buildings, one a residential building immediately to the southeast with 3 stories, ground floor commercial, a contractor's establishment 1 story to the south of that, and then the remainder of the lots, an assemblage constituting a gas station on the southeast corner of the block. This is the area map, which tells the story well, and after this, I'll defer to Mr. Liberis. There is obviously the Gowanus, which runs adjacent to the site. The site has excellent access, is surrounded by the rezoning area by 3 streets, the site itself by 2 streets. This is a major thoroughfare adjacent to the site in terms of both Hamilton as well as transportation available from the Gowanus, as well as the station, the subway F&G lines within 3 blocks to the northeast, and 2 bus lines running along Hamilton Avenue. So a great area in terms of transportation, and also helps us to create jobs near areas where people live in the area. I'm going to page the photos and just go to the plans and materials, which can be reviewed by Mr. Liberis. Nick?
All right, thank you, Rich. Hi, Nick Liberis from Camara. So this is a very interesting site because you're in this area of a Red Hook, which is very empty. So there's a lot of lots over there where you have contractors storing stuff, and this is one of these such lots. So this lot has been with Mike Willie and his family for I think a couple generations now, and it's right next to the highway here. So when they came to us and they asked us, what do you think about this? We saw that it was about 1.5 blocks away from the Smith Street station, and it's kind of part of this, part of this access that's at the end of Court Street. So you can see on this map that Rich had before that Court Street over here is kind of coming down south from the right hand side over here. This thing does not have a laser pointer, right? Does it? No. Okay. So anyway, we're at the end of this axis over here, and it just seemed like it was a very interesting site to put something, because what ends up happening is that you have something framed by the highway. So we were very cognizant of this, and we thought, this is an interesting spot to do some placemaking, and so we called up Keith Bray from Brooklyn DOT, and he said that there's this one strip over here, which is something that DOT has actually contemplated as being a future passageway connecting Carroll Gardens down to Red Hook. So we thought, this is a good opportunity to create something which kind of anchors this access. So we came up with this building after a couple of passes, where we have this big focus that's on the base of the building to kind of light up this space that's underneath the highway in a way that kind of makes like a welcoming, entryway into the Red Hook side of the highway. And we had something that was much more polychromatic up on top, which we were advised by certain DOT people to not do because it would be very distracting from the highway. So we went much more monochrome. So the reason that I'm getting into the building design this much is that this thing is different than a lot of rezonings that you guys see, because it's much more like a bespoke building for Willie and his friends. So Willie has I think like the second or third biggest scaffolding and hoist company in the city. And his offices right now are, I think in Bed-Stuy? You're in Bed-Stuy, right? Yeah, right around there. Yeah. So when we first started to look at this, it was something where he, also us, my company, and a few other people were looking for office space. We couldn't find any, so we thought, this looks like a good site. It's easy to get to for everybody. So we thought, let's put this here. So. What ended up ensuing was Willie made this very concerted effort to go and to speak to the community. So he's very dialed in with what everybody wants. Everybody was pretty universal in saying that they wanted a supermarket. The council member wants some light manufacturing, so we're giving that to her on the second floor. And then we'll have offices up above. So I think about 30,000 of this office space is already spoken for. There's probably another 10 or 15 to go. But we feel confident that it'll be filled. So to the building. So you have the first floor supermarket, which is mainly accessed off of the corner over here. So this is Mill and Hamilton over here. So there's a street widening line, which means that we're going to have to push the building back. So we're going to have about 26 feet of sidewalk off of Hamilton. We have about 16 feet of sidewalk off of Mill. So the supermarket exit was contemplated to be coming off onto Mill. This is that view of that upper monochrome portion. So this is the cellar plan. We're going to have to give some space over to the supermarket for the cellar. This is the supermarket floor. So, we'd be coming in off of that very broad corner. We've given lots of thought about how, there'll be access such that people can pick up, drop off. The loading has been placed to the end over here. You can see at this left side. So we have a loading berth, which is going to be servicing the building as a whole. We have a bunch of dissimilar uses that end up triggering a part of the zoning text, which means that we have to have a full loading berth. So we're going to provide a full loading berth. And then on this right side over here, on the right side, you can see that there are elevators going up, and that's up to the office and also to the light manufacturing portion. So this is the second floor. You can see that part of this floor has been deeded over to light manufacturing, which is that crosshatch. And then the gray hatch, we are working with Karen Blondell, who has a not-for-profit and who is also the head of the Red Hook Houses West. And she has a 40-year gratis lease for this shaded gray area at the right. So we've been working very, very closely with her. Then the rest of this will just be normative office space. We have pretty nice column spacing. It's on like a 22 by 30 foot grid. We have a bunch of balconies facing south that shade the building and also give some nice outdoor space for everybody. This is the building setback. So there's a terrace here. So Willie hasn't spoken for this floor, but I'm sure this is the one he's going to take. You get the nice terrace. And that's it. So thank you, guys.
Okay. We'll open it up for questions. Commissioner Dweck, followed by Commissioner Benjamin, followed by Commissioner Ramprashad.
Thank you. I was very happy to see the inclusion of the community facility space. Can you speak more about the light manufacturing and use that will be taking place in the building?
Sure. So I'll start. There's one of the benefits of the project to date has been the applicant's outreach to community members as well as to the IBZ. And so we've been in discussions with the Industrial Development Corporation and have talked to them about potential light manufacturing users. So while Nick talked about 30,000 square feet of the office space being designated, at this point, while the use is designated for light manufacturing, we actually were going to engage further with the IBZ as far as potential users for the light manufacturing space. So again, nothing definite as far as a single user identified, but the use would be carved out and would be tied to the site pursuant to a restricted declaration.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Commissioner Benjamin.
Yeah, I had a couple of questions about how that's going to function. When you showed the graphic with the loading dock, are the trucks going to have to back in or back out?
So the thought is that they would not be using it to actually pull in because everything with this size supermarket only uses like a 35-foot truck maximum, and we often see like vegetable deliveries being done on like vans. So the thought is that we'd basically do 75 feet of no parking, truck loading only in front, and then it would be up to the supermarket, to have to schedule that stuff so as not to mess with traffic patterns in the area.
And if they're going to be loading across the sidewalk, where would they enter with their goods?
So they would go in through that.
Could you show the graphic again?
Yeah. So they would go in through this loading facility. And so they would go in through here, and then you could take this freight elevator down to the cellar. So the cellar is where you would,
freight elevator at the loading dock?
at that point of loading there, yeah. So this is only deeded over really to the supermarket and to the light manufacturing.
And how would one get goods to the light manufacturing? You'd take the freight elevator and then they'd have to go across? Or is the freight elevator going to all stories or only to the first and second stories?
Only to the cellar first and second. So it goes to the supermarket program and also to the light manufacturing, which is on the second floor here. And after that, it disappears. So, it's only for these uses here. And if we end up getting some more light manufacturing, let's say for the third floor, at that point, we would also bring it up to the third floor. But we're not exactly sure how much that we'll be getting, and this is the minimum that we've been compelled to give. So.
And in the past, you've talked about potentially an ambulatory care facility at this location?
It's possible. It's possible.
Not probable? You seemed a little more, not you personally,
No,
but
I don't know, to be honest. It's up to the market.
More discussion that this was a probability, not a...
Yeah.
So the M15 gives us a spread of 6.5 for community facility versus 5 for commercial. So the additional 14,000 square feet would be earmarked for an ambulatory diagnostic care. We have not identified a user, and it is included in the project plans, but that's essentially as far as it would go. We would be compelled to use it for an ambulatory diagnostic care center or similar user, and indeed some of the nonprofit space on the second floor will come out of that square footage, which would be devoted in our program to a nonprofit that would be involved in industrial education in terms of job creation and such. That would be that nonprofit space, as well as for the local public housing civic association. But as far as the ambulatory care space, again, allocated for the building, but we don't have a user yet.
And in your planning, where did you think, if such a use were to exist, where would the entrance be? How would people gain access to it? And how would it not interfere with the other entrances for the trucks, for the supermarket, et cetera?
Yeah, well, so we have, the way that this has been set up, we have the 3 or 4 different programs, and
right.
Most of the stuff will be coming in off of Hamilton for the upper part of the building. From the corner, that's what will feed the first floor, and then the only thing that'll be coming in off of Mill will be this more service type of like loading and stuff like that, and also the egress coming out of the supermarket.
And that's one of the issues that concerned me when last we spoke, is that, Hamilton Avenue, particularly in rush hour, is a well-traveled.
Yeah.
There were people parked and double parked, and there are people trying to make all sorts of different movements.
Yeah.
The supermarket entrance being there, you will have cars of all types waiting to pick up people who have done their shopping, or I'm concerned about the conflicts there. Have you looked at other locations for the supermarket entrance other than on Hamilton Avenue?
So Kevin can.
So they're asking about other orientations other than the corner there on Mill. But one of the things I actually spoke to at a long-term 40-year operator of a grocery store in Brownsville, who also had a rezoning before this board some time back. And he had indicated, in terms of delivery conflicts, to avoid delivery conflicts in his experience, you got to get up early, you got to be available late. So 4 a.m., 5 a.m. before you have rush hour traffic is when deliveries. Also for smaller groceries of 6,000 square feet, you don't have the large, like 48-foot, trucks. And also, deliveries are much less. So large grocery stores have, 2 and 3 deliveries potentially a day. Smaller ones, because the turnover is different and smaller batches ordered, Tuesdays and Fridays are kind of typical in small grocery stores. So we think the loading, in terms of loading and unloading in terms of vehicle serving to the food store, can be managed effectively in the building. And if it, pleases the commission, we have discussed internally that there would be an individual operator super for the building, as well as the operator of the grocery store would agree to organize their deliveries off-peak, which is standard practice. So in terms of the entry at the corner on Mill Street, so I don't know if you're familiar with the DOT plans to improve that corridor and daylight the corner. So there are very significant pedestrian enhancements, high visibility crosswalks, larger corner lighting taking place that would allow for that corner to intake patrons into the grocery store and into the upper levels of the office building, and also the zone that's present there. So it's a no standing zone, right? So it expeditious drop-offs. So we believe on Mill Street we will have no problem getting a no standing zone. Both Nick and I have been before DOT requesting such signage change, and I think for that frontage, because it's very close to the stop bar, the location, in terms of the building, I think what we want to do is we want to place somebody out there during peak, arrivals and departures, and generally when you're talking about, obviously your concern particularly is related to a medical office where people come and go all day. And I think if we do have a sizable tenant, that we would want to have a steward out in front to make sure that cars alight, they have space, that they don't pull out into travel lanes, that we manage the curb space based on the tenancy of the building. Now, if we don't have people coming and going all day, and the unique aspect of this building is it's meant to be very community-oriented, very walk-oriented, and the traffic numbers that we use to analyze, very conservative mix of traffic-generating uses was very favorable towards walk and transit access. But regardless, we need to manage the pedestrian zone. We need to manage the cars making turns and going through that. And yes, it does get very congested, certainly during peak hours. But our approach here is to manage the curbside based on the unique types of uses that come into the building. Right now, in terms of offices, in terms of the grocery store has a peak in the midday, primarily, and you can look at all the Google Analytics in there, and it's very much midday, Saturdays, typical New York City. And so we think that will support the building, reduce, trips, for pedestrians everywhere. So I think that unique program will also help manage the building because there's not necessarily a lot of peak overlap in terms of the arrival uses. But the solution there to kind of address your concern is to have a very active field operation that makes sure that the area of the curb frontage is well managed, particularly during deliveries, particularly as it would relate to a medical office use.
And if it's after hours too, then you'll have all of this empty swath of space like during the day, and that's why we place that exit there, because people can just pull over there, pick up, and you'll have.
Well, during the afternoon peak, though, when people are coming from the train station and they may in fact have someone meet them to go home with their groceries, that is when you will also see the base traffic volume higher. So
one of the issues on the block that's a problem.
Where's the traffic light?
It's
at the corner.
Yeah, it's at the Champered corner. Yeah.
Well, you can see it here, kind of.
Yeah.
At this bottom left here.
It's a diagram for the street improvement at the end.
Oh, at the end.
So you go all the way to the
end. Right. Yeah.
So you can see what this is going to look like.
Oh, this one. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, our location here is at the bottom left, and it'll be a four-way controlled intersection. So one of the issues, and actually we put 24-hour cameras out there. The areas directly in front of 150 Mill is actually, it's sort of truncated parking lane. There's 3 travel lanes, and then there's this sort of odd-shaped 7-foot, 6-foot sort of drop-off lane. And in front of our building, there's very little drop-off activity because it's been a fallow land use. Having said that, if you go 3 blocks down, there's a car wash facility that kind of really complicates things. They use the curb and the travel lane, and that's really the conflict that's occurring. That's typical in New York City. But that on that block, that's really the only one that's sort of actively using the sort of drop-off lane and the sidewalk, collectively. But other than that, our area's been pretty open from the camera observations we did.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate your answers and taking the time to really walk me through what I think is a difficult and challenging location with the number of uses that you are proposing and the way in which each one of those separate uses might use the space and the needs they would have. Thank you very much for your attention to that.
Commissioner Ramprashad.
Yes, thank you. I had similar questions as Commissioner Benjamin and Commissioner DeWay. Just one last question for me is going to be with regards to the supermarket. What kind of lease is was signed, or is it long-term lease, or and what you said you were mentioned before in the cellar? You're going to allocate space for the supermarket. Can you identify exactly where that is?
Yeah. So.
The lease is going to be minimum
25 years. Yeah. So the lease has been contemplated as being minimum 25 years, and the cellar. So we have the main. So I found the laser pointer. It doesn't work here. All right. So we have.
Usually.
The shaded area, or.
Basically, that's it. Yeah.
Okay.
And then to the top right, we have all the office amenity stuff, and then. Here's the mic. So just so we don't have to mess with like Hamilton, with having to do the street improvements like tying into Con Ed and all this stuff. Everything will be coming in off of Mill Street. So we have the mechanical rooms kind of positioned there, and there's your supermarket space.
And my last question, is there a restriction in the time that the supermarket is allowed to get deliveries? Is that going to be structured into the lease with the supermarket?
I'll let Kevin.
It could be. I don't think there's any intent at this point in doing it, but, said it's standard operating procedure. Obviously, Willie, that's something that you can discuss with them in terms of logistics, but it's an experienced food operator in a small store, and, in New York, they know they have to, because his curb space is limited, they know that they have to, they can't pull in often to small, something larger than a bodega. So, if that is a stipulation that the commission, would like to see, it's certainly something that Willie can ask of the operator. But again, it's standard fare.
Thank you.
Commissioner Crowell.
Yes, thank you. Commissioner Benjamin asked most of the questions I had. I did have a question, and I had raised some of these issues earlier, so it was greatly helpful to hear your responses. A question about any traffic calming measures for pedestrian access to the Smith and 9th Street. I'm very familiar with this area. That is a particularly, as we've said, busy area, and I'm not exactly sure how much pedestrian traffic really comes from that stop in terms of daily workforce workflow.
Yeah.
Workforce pedestrian flow.
There's not a lot. So we did pedestrian data collection in there to identify both Saturday and weekday traffic, both on the linear segments on Hamilton and across, Mill, and modest pedestrian traffic because it's not an inviting corridor, even though it might be a direct route. As you can see on the screen, there's both significant pedestrian enhancements underneath the Gowanus, high visibility crosswalks on all quadrants, ADA tactile compliant modern ped ramps that would be supplied at all corners of the project. So it's pretty
significant reengineering.
Significant reengineering.
Okay, I just wanted to establish that. And then one other question about the loading docks. It's one thing about what's coming in, but there's a lot going out in terms of light manufacturing and things. There's both supplies that are needed as well as whatever is being produced, that there has to be an outflow and transportation away for that. I'm just concerned about certainly the size of Mill Street and the access. Mill Street is very narrow. I think it appears to be wider than it actually is in your renderings. I'm just concerned about that.
So the major point here is you currently have a scaffolding operation that brings trucks in and out of the site. And the size and the mass and the obstruction of those, certainly an amount of deliveries when you break down and you replace, when you do a new setup for scaffolding, certainly likely to be less intense than that. And of course, scaffolding, Willie Picu's business, this is what they do. So maybe you can describe if you had any issues with operation.
But this is a totally different use, though.
Well, what I'm saying is it is totally different use, but our intent here is for much more of like a light manufacturing rather than a warehouse storage, which has a greater amount of goods movement. So again, I think that in addition to the concept of...
I appreciate that. You're going to have a lot more pedestrian presence as well, which adds a variable that isn't isn't in place right now.
100%. And that is
Just
part of the
concerned about safety and
part of the
also
intent
bulk of this
for
project.
drop-offs related to the office in general on Mill, whereas deliveries, trash pickup would be on Mill. Hamilton would have drop-offs associated in the 60-foot storage lane that's in front of the site would facilitate drop-offs in the building. In terms of deliveries related to material associated with potential light manufacturing, again, we would schedule those late. You know, that's something that absolutely can be done depending on the type of manufacturer, the fabricator, either late or early. The other benefit here is we're not close. You know, there are no real adjacent residential uses, even though there's an adjacent R5, you know, so we're not really impacted by late material deliveries. And again, that's something good to be written into lease operationally for a future tenant. But that is the way that we see this building, like the Richard Street project that was approved by this board previously that had many similar types of uses, is to manage the operations of that building in terms of deliveries. When you have multiple different types of uses combining office, you know, there they had local retail, so commercial, so different type of configuration. And one of the things I do want to note, though, is in this type of office building, the benefit of having a grocery store, the benefit of potentially having medical offices there, the potential of having a job training facility that would source from NYCHA houses, you know, all of those it's uniquely, you know, curated towards the local economy. But I do understand. We need to run a tight ship in terms of
I also know that the underlying zone with the R5 there could be, you know, in the future, as this project makes things even more attractive, the development could complicate things even more.
I would just note with regards to that, the R5 here has already produced in terms of housing the Red Hook houses to the west of the site. And I just add that because in light of the conversations regarding traffic and use, one of the things that was so great about this project, which again involved personally more community meetings than I've ever attended for any rezoning we've been involved in, is that the Red Hook tenants were so excited about the prospect of getting a food market here, a supermarket. And the fact is that within a block of the site, you have the largest public housing development in Brooklyn. And so the very nature of that tenant association and that housing, as far as how close it is to the site, I think contributes to the lack of at least a vehicular traffic here, which just addresses some of the prior issues. So
I appreciate that.
Sure.
Other questions? Commissioner Osorio.
I think Commissioner Goodrich was first.
Oh,
I'm sorry, I didn't see you.
thank you. I'll just ask very quickly. You mentioned about NYCHA residents and job training would source from NYCHA residents. Can you talk a bit more about that? I'm wondering about how the job training might help NYCHA residents, and also if there's any thought to any, like, even particular jobs, like going to NYCHA residents.
Sure, I'll start. Sure. So the conversations to date, which took place at the Red Hook's houses, were basically a discussion of how a lot of the population and tenants in that development feel that haven't been serviced in terms of job creation. And so particularly there was discussion as a matter of public record, inclusive of the IBZ, which was that despite this industrial business zone, that there hasn't been a lot of time and energy spent on job training. The allocation of specific space for the Public Housing Civic Association is specifically meant to address that. And Karen Blundell, a long-term activist in the area, has already begun her internal discussions regarding programming of that space. So the bottom line is you've got a phenomenal local population here, which of available, potential workers and light manufacturing workers. You've got a space which will produce light manufacturing businesses, and then you've got space to train those potential workers as well. So I don't think that Karen or others have really programmed the space in terms of the exact nature of those light manufacturing spaces, but I do know that connectivity between those spaces is one of the most attractive things about the project to them.
So to clarify, because I'm aware that it is a very large public housing development nearby. So when you were talking earlier about Red Hook tenants, because I for some reason thought you meant just like Red Hook tenants, anyone. So most of the tenants that you've spoken with are from the NYCHA development?
Correct.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Sure.
Commissioner Osorio.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Thanks so much for the presentation, and thanks so much for addressing all of our questions so far. This is really useful for us to understand the recent changes in the proposal. When we first saw this, my first reaction was, how is this contributing to the IBC? And the response that I got was that it was a clear no, that there was no interest, that the land use rationale had been prepared without it. Therefore, the EAS and all of the preliminary, analysis had been basically focused on that. I'm really interested in hearing where you think we are in terms of addressing the changes in the proposal to honor your interest in reflecting what you've heard from the community. I think that that's critical and that that's really important, and I think you should be commended for taking a step back and, responding to what the local stakeholders are asking you. Now, in terms of the comments that we've received, there's explicit language referencing skepticism around the applicant's commitment.
Sure.
And so, I wanted to give you a chance to sort of help us understand a little bit what's been your response to some of the language. I've requested to the department a copy of the testimony that the South Brooklyn Industrial Corporation provided at the borough president hearing, just so that I can see. I know that that's quoted, but we haven't seen it. Nonetheless, the borough president is very clear in terms of documenting some hesitance, maybe in the past, from the applicant to address the engaging in the signature of or in the agreement around the restrictive declaration, which, in response to Commissioner Dweck's question, I think you explicitly referenced. So I'm wondering if you can help us understand a little bit, sort of what's been the general response. It sounds like the applicant is willing to engage with the MOU that the community is asking, but I'm wondering, sort of help us understand, sort of how do we go from point A to point B, number one. Number two, why you think that this is still within scope. And then number three, sort of how can we sort of whether there's any additional documentation you can provide in terms of helping us understand how, we will be able to fit these additional uses in the building.
Sure. So there's land use rationale, and then there's everything else. And so with regards to everything else, we feel that an M15 is appropriate here for many of the reasons that we talked about during the discussion. And then everything else is, what comes next, and how are we honoring the commitments that we've made and have discussed here today. So there's two types of commitments that have been made with regards to the building. Those that have been made in terms of the operations of the building with regards to local community stakeholders, such as Public Housing Civic Association, Community Board 6, which again voted overwhelmingly in favor. And so, as is the case with probably a majority of rezonings that at least my office is involved in, there is now a community benefits agreement, which is being negotiated with the nonprofit that is involved, as well as their council. And that memorializes the discussion around the community facility space, as well as the light manufacturing space, the supermarket, and the administration of the agreement. That's there. The IBZ, which, we understand the goals of the IBZ. We're also familiar with the goals of all of the city planning initiatives pursuant to, for example, the Southwest Brooklyn Plan, the Gowanus Plan, and how important job creation is, and really fostering that type of building. And so the IBZ conversations have been slow, but I think, and we also have requested the testimony of the IBZ before the Brooklyn Borough President. But there's, I think, two things to consider. Number one is, what do you get with the existing M11? You get this site, which is around a 10,000 square foot site with an 1,100 square foot, 1,000 to 1,100 square foot building, and then a 9,000 square foot scaffolding contractor. And so the question is, with the M15, you can create a lot more. And part of I think the reason that it's taken so long for this baby to get delivered is because, the mix of those uses and what you actually deliver, there's a lot of people who are saying we have an interest in this. We've hit a pretty nice place now I note that the IBZ's discussion in terms of the Brooklyn Borough President's report did not include a discussion of the restrictive declaration, which was forwarded to them. Brady Maxwell, who is one of their vice presidents and does community relations, has that. We have emails back from him confirming that they're reviewing it internally. So they were always explicit about an understanding that they wanted a commitment in that regard. Beyond the land use rationale, beyond what the commission might look at in terms of whether or not the building makes sense, it's in terms of whether or not it makes sense for the IBZ. The second thing to consider, as we are in ULURP, a public process, which again goes to the council for confirmation, is that the council member has always been clear on two major goals. The first was that there would be a community benefits agreement, which would have all of those aspects which we previously discussed, but also that we need to make peace with the IBZ here. And so the IBZ talked to us for a while about prior projects they've been involved in and how they've received those commitments. And so while we don't necessarily recommend restrictive declarations, we did so in this case. And so that's something which is in their court and being reviewed by them. So, you know, the IBZ, I think in our discussions with them, recognized, for example, the value of having a supermarket at this site. They themselves were impressed by the fact that that doesn't exist in this area. The supermarket options are very poor. It would really break your heart as commissioners of the City Planning Commission to hear about the lack of food choices, you know, and particularly in light of our discussion around fresh foods. When we were meeting with the community stakeholders at the Red Hook houses, like the fact that they were looking at produce and meat products that were, you know, in poor condition. And so the opportunity for a new supermarket to open this space is something that they really want. The IBZ and the IDC really also spoke to that and said, well, that sounds like something, if you can deliver that, that would be invaluable to the area as well. We're delivering that in terms of a long-term lease. And also, we know we need to make peace with the IBZ and that commitment. So again, while it's outside the commission's purview in terms of restrictive declarations, they have that, and we are committing to that space.
Follow up, yeah. Thank you. This is very interesting, all very useful. I really look forward to reviewing any additional documentation that you can help us, that could help us understand exactly where we are. Understood that this is a timeline, a moving timeline, and, you know, we're looking at specific moments within that conversation. I do want to respond to a couple of things that you said. I think that calling this an overwhelming response maybe is a little too much because, you know, from what I see, there were 2 people voting against, 2 abstaining, and then there were some stipulations. This was approved with conditions. And, you know, part of it is an MOU that is calling for a community benefits agreement. Usually when a community asks for a community benefits agreement, it's because there's no overwhelming sort of like support for it. But that being said, I understand what you said. The other thing that I appreciate from what you've presented today is that there's a commitment to the IBC in terms of creating a workforce and contributing to industrial jobs, which the community board, by the way, specifically includes in the MOU for those jobs to be local. So help us understand a little bit, sort of like what type of research has been done, how many companies are in the IBC right now, what sectors, who are you working with to attract to the space. Help us a little bit understand sort of like where you are in terms of actually fulfilling that commitment.
Yeah, it's good. I'd say 2 things to that. The first is just to read the text of the community board approval, 28 in favor, 2 against, 2 abstaining. And the consideration, again, pursuant to their text, motion to conditionally approve with stipulations, applicant and local community-based organizations will prepare a letter or MOU outlining the CBA's inclusions, which we've done and shared with them, and that the applicant will continue to dialogue with the local CBOs, community benefit-based organizations, throughout the ULURP process. We've satisfied and have addressed our obligations to the community board. I do think it's a strong approval, particularly from Community Board 6, if we know them and their history of approvals. That's the first thing. I can't and don't want to give you anything with regards to the more specific nature of the industrial jobs here because I don't want to speak out of turn. I know that there are 2 parties that are integrally involved with that. The first is the IBZ, and the second is the Public Housing Benefit Service Corporation. And the IBZ, like we've gotten to the point with them in our documentation where we've identified the specific light industrial use groups that they would like to see at this space. And so that they have that documentation and, you know, I need them, we want them, And regardless of what the commission does, we know we have issues at the council without that. And so they've got what they need for us to basically send us back their input, but they do have a binding restricted declaration from us, which includes use groups, which would be located in the space, to the extent that they basically discuss with us reducing those use groups or catering those use groups or designating subgroups within those use groups. We're happy to have that conversation and expect to have that. But right now, it's just the space and just the commitment.
Thank you. Just really quickly, if I may respond really quickly.
Last one, because I want to get to...
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you for the clarifications. But, just to reiterate, our role here is a technical review of the proposal. To hear you say that you cannot and you don't want to sort of like speak about something that is critical to us, is something that I just want to make sure that, you hear from us that at this point in the process, this is information that we need to see in order to understand the proposal.
Okay.
Thank you.
I thank you for that.
Okay. Commissioner Kamani and then Commissioner Dweck.
Thank you, and thank you so much. I just have a quick question. Karen Blondell and I have been thought partners on many things over the years. So I just want to ask quickly, I know that the space for her and her organization will be provided and at no cost. And just is that forever, or what are the terms of that?
Sure. It is for a 40-year term.
Okay.
And I think after that,
Thank you.
Yeah.
We have we think the world of her. I mean, like, her commitment to the area and to this specific aspect of the application has been nothing short of amazing. So thank you.
Thank you.
That was 4-0, did you say?
4-0.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Commissioner Dweck.
Thank you. I find the inclusion of the supermarket a tremendous community benefit. Have you, although this is not a fresh zoning application, have you reached out to the IDA to enter an agreement with them which would codify the existence of the supermarket there?
Yeah, so we did speak to them, yes, and they said to come back after the rezoning. So it's
Your
something they intend to
intention
do.
is to go through the process with them?
Yes, as of right now, yes.
Perfect, thank you.
Yep.
Just to add, the IBZ in our prior discussions with them said that they had tenants who were literally ready to move into this space when it became available. So we would expect that they would have a lot to say about the use of the space, which although, again, they didn't identify them specifically, we know that it's going to be utilized and that they're going to have a hand in that. So.
Yeah, if I may add, if you remember the 41 Richard Street rezoning when the IBZ came there, they're very similar contemplated uses. The other benefit here is you have a job training center that can support the IBZ. Also, there's a dearth of office space associated with industrial uses that are present in the broader IBZ. I just toured the entire Brooklyn waterfront, where I think New York City Economic Development Corporation is, basically unlocking a lot of uses along the waterfront. But in the meantime, there is a backup. So, I know this isn't the type of commitment that you have in mind, but I just want you to think about three very positive sort of criteria. A, we want to tenant the space. IBZ has potential tenants. We have the space available. B, we have office space that can uniquely support the type of operations related and the type of trades associated with it. And C, we have job training that will specifically help support job training of professionals within the IBZ in the area. So, I think three positive supporting criteria. I think we're just, as we move through the rezoning process, it's sort of hard to go into those hard discussions. So I just wanted to add that texture, that there are supporting planning criteria here to support the IBC.
Okay, I just wanted to, back to the supermarket, what is the approximate size of the supermarket?
It's about 8,000 or 9,000 square feet in its current iteration, and it could grow a little bit if we add some more space into the cellar.
And what hours of operation do you foresee?
What hours of operation do we foresee? I think 7 a.m. to fairly late to serve the nearby residences.
7 to 9.
Yeah, 7 to 9.
And your deliveries you contemplate would be presumably in the morning and
yes. Yes, very, very early. So let's say like 4:30 to 6:30, and then late night.
Okay. On the question of office space, because this is I think a mix of uses we don't often see here.
Yeah.
You know, community facility, light manufacturing, supermarket space.
Mm-hmm.
So what kind of tenants for the commercial office space do you foresee here?
So it's mainly Willie, and then some of our friends who are GCs of different flavors. So right now it's about 20,000 square feet, which will be split up between Willie, a company which is called Prestige Construction, and then PTEX, and there's a broker, EXR, who is very active in North Brooklyn, and he has like a bunch of people lined up as well. We also might move in there also, and we would probably take another couple thousand square feet. So.
Okay. You want to add something, Mr. Lamont?
No, we just appreciate everyone's attention to the application and are hopeful on behalf of the applicant as well as the community that we're able to achieve the approval of the commission. Thank you.
Any further questions on this matter?
I'll just comment, I love the design.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Moving on to public testimony, we have one speaker signed up, Valon Toku. No, that was oh, okay. My legal name. Okay. All right, no further speakers.
No further speakers? All right, then we will close the item. Thank you.
Okay. Borough Brooklyn, calendar numbers 22 and 23, 250 86th Street rezoning, CD10, calendar number 22, C230354ZMK, calendar number 23, N230355ZRK. Public hearing in the matter of an application for a zoning map and zoning text amendments concerning 250 86th Street rezoning. And I'll note we have a 3-minute testimony by Richard LaBelle.
Correct. Hi.
But with others available for Q&A.
Welcome back.
Thanks. It's good being here. This is a 3-minute presentation for what amounts to be a very straightforward rezoning application, 250 86th Street rezoning application. This application seeks 2 items. The first would be a zoning map amendment to rezone 9 lots and a portion of a 10th lot from an existing R32 zoning district to an R6B district. This is along 86th Street in Bay Ridge, an extra wide street, which can easily handle the slight uptick in density that would be permitted pursuant to this rezoning. The second would be a zoning text amendment to, of course, zone mandatory inclusionary housing, allowing for both options 1 and 2 in the project area. In this case, these actions would permit the applicant's medical office to occupy a portion of the 2-story plus basement building at 250 86th Street. While no enlargements are proposed and the envelope would remain the same, we note that the land use rationale here for an R6B is strong, as is demonstrated by the following materials. You can see the site within the Bay Ridge Special District, zoned R32. The R32 district has been in existence there since 1961. The area is in need of modernization in terms of the available zoning districts along major corridors like 86th Street. This is the applicant's site highlighted in red as well as the adjacent sites. We note that, and probably easier to look at through the area map, which is next, that the 3 to 4 lots adjacent to the site to the east, located adjacent to an existing R6B, are already at an FAR of greater than 2.2. They would gain no additional rights in terms of development pursuant to this rezoning, but all would come closer to being complying buildings. Then there's the applicant's site, located in red. There's also one blue site that is the Salvation Army immediately adjacent. And then there are 4 or 5 lots to the west of the site that would benefit. Each of those is already zoned to an FAR of greater than 1. Each is non-complying in terms of the rezoning. So again, in terms of the existing compliance, really only about 70% of the lots in question comply with the existing R32, whereas after the rezoning, all of the lots would either be compliant or would be at least closer to being compliant with those floor area ratios that are over a 2. We would also note that immediately to the east of us is 3rd Avenue. To the east of that, within a block and a half of the site, is the subway line along 3rd Avenue. A block that says along 3rd Avenue 4th Avenue.
Fourth Avenue.
Correct, 4th Avenue, thank you. And then 2 bus lines are along 3rd Avenue and 86th Street. So the area is easily able to handle the density in terms of the local traffic flow. We note the site, as well as the surrounding buildings, the R6B district, having a maximum height of 50 feet, is indeed intended for this type of residential development, kind of low-scale character of the area. And then the applicant site itself, a basement and 2-story building, at which the applicant would operate her medical practice, which benefits from having a large number of patients from the surrounding area, and we'd be happy to answer any questions.
So the non-conforming buildings adjacent to the site, they all precede. Correct. 1961.
They do. They do.
Yeah. Questions?
Or I would just say at least they're existing legal non-complying buildings.
Right.
Which would mean that they preceded 61.
Right. Questions? Commissioner Osorio.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Thanks again.
Of course.
I'm wondering if you can share a little bit the response to the community board's sort of like issues raised and so forth.
Yeah. So Brooklyn Community Board 10 has very specific views in terms of land use in the area. And so the discussions around this rezoning, frankly, the R6B already exists along 3rd Avenue. And the idea was to stretch that existing context to allow for development along 86th Street. The actual development here would be limited, but the opportunity here would be to allow for potential redevelopment with appropriate zoning. It's clear that just even given the existing typology of these buildings here, that the existing R32 is not even reflected in this existing building stock. And an R6B, the minimum zoning district that would allow for additional affordability in this area. I would add that Community Board 10 has a shortage in terms of the generation of inclusionary housing, and particularly mandatory inclusionary housing is an extreme challenge here. So the discussions around the Community Board was really their concern over what MIH would permit here, which would be additional development with affordable units. They were particularly concerned about the Salvation Army site, the additional square footage which would be gained by that site, as well as an adjacent residential building owned by the Salvation Army. They were not even on board with including the 3 sites that were adjacent to the R6B, which are already built to over an R6B. So it was a challenging conversation. We've had both successful and unsuccessful applications, rezoning applications with Community Board 10, and I was discouraged by the fact that they would not think that an R6B on a 100-foot wide street next to transportation was appropriate, but I respect their process, and that was their decision.
Thank you.
Appreciate
it.
Other questions? There being none, thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any further speakers on this item, Madam Secretary?
Yes, we have one speaker who is registered, Josephine Beckman, who is on Zoom. I'll go ahead and promote.
I got my count here. Okay.
Hi, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Hi, how are you?
We can hear you.
Great, Thank you. Thank you so much for the opportunity. My name is Josephine Beckman, and I am the District Manager of Community Board 10 in Brooklyn. The members of the board voted all in favor with one recusal to recommend disapproval of this individual request to change zoning for this and an additional 9 parcels in order to create a larger doctor's office beyond what is permitted under the current zoning regulations. Property owners within the rezoning proposed area attended Community Board 10 Zoning and Land Use Committee to express opposition to this individual application. The committee inquired as to why this particular case was not brought to the Board of Standards and Appeals. It was explained that it did not meet all of the conditions necessary. The board and area neighbors felt strongly that the solution to the applicant's situation when they purchased this property over 12 years ago to enlarge their doctor's office should not be a rezoning application that includes parcels of property beyond their own. While this is a wide street, it's also completely residential in the main portion of the block with the Salvation Army Community Facility. The members of Community Board 10 do not believe that the applicant's desire to create a larger doctor's office is strong enough argument to support this rezoning application. The special Bay Ridge District rezonings were supported by the district, its area elected officials, and the Department of City Planning. The special Bay Ridge District includes specific community facility rules pertaining to height and FAR within the R3 through R5B districts. This would exceed that. Board members believe this should not be changed across 10 properties for an individual application. It was suggested that an analysis be made by the Department of City Planning to determine if a text change to allow the applicant that may be in a similar situation seeking a modest increase in community facility size for a physician's office be considered via the BSA special permit. We have submitted testimony, and we do ask the members of the commission to review that for your consideration. Thank you so much again for the opportunity.
So, Ms. Beckman, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
So your concern is that this rezoning would in some way jeopardize or compromise the special district zoning?
For community facility, yes.
The community facility?
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions? Hold on, we have questions. Commissioner Osorio.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Thank you very much for taking the time to testify to the City Planning Commission. Your voice is very important here. I have a very quick question, which is, just a couple minutes ago, you heard the applicant discuss their response to your comments, and so I'm wondering if there's anything that you want to add to what you heard.
No, I think that, the board has seen other, have reviewed other applications by applicants seeking to, that are in difficult situations and want to develop housing and affordable housing. That's not the case here. The case here is an individual applicant seeking to expand a community facility use. We've been supportive of zoning text changes that add density where appropriate, where there's thorough community review, and I think this block is unique because it is a wide street. However, it is residential. And again, the community facility, portion of the Special Bay Ridge District is one that, it is part of the Special Bay Ridge District, and many members of the community, as well as of the board, would like to, keep in place.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Benjamin. Commissioner Benjamin.
My question is actually for Mr. Lobel. Is this proposal, as I don't know where I read it, but I believe I read that basically this is to legalize an existing condition, and that the applicant is the location currently has this FAR, but it is either a legal non-conforming use or a non-conforming illegal use, which...
Oh, it's neither. The applicant purchased the property, and upon...
About 10 years ago?
Correct. And then upon application to DOB, was informed by her building professionals that she was unable to locate her community facility at the site, given that the yard requirements and open space requirements would require yards to each side of the property, which would essentially make her space less than 8 feet wide, rendering it unusable. So since that time, which now amounts to several years, the applicant, with a strong patient base in Bay Ridge, has moved her practice to Staten Island, and so is interested in the opportunity here to locate back at the site. The applicant feels that the land use rationale here is strong, and so the application would merely be would allow for this use at the site, but is appropriate in terms of the density.
And of the 9 properties that are included, how many of them have complying side yards and rear yards?
Well, Commissioner Benjamin, I would say that 70% of them, I would just go with FAR right now. I'd say all of them have complying side yards, but I'd say that 70% of them are non-complying in terms of floor area ratio. So those include the sites to the west, to the east of the site that are above a 2.2, as well as 5 lots to the west of the site, each above a 1. The R32, the underlying R32 would only permit a 0.5 for residential.
And is that because they've built into the rear yard then, or they've added a floor on top?
That they have additional square footage on top. But you know, again, happy to produce additional analysis. But we do know that you know, the FARs, with the exception of one residential property, are all non-compliant.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Other questions for anyone? Okay. Thank you, Ms. Beckman, for your testimony. Are there any further speakers on this item, Madam Secretary?
No, Vice Chair, there are no further speakers.
Thank you. And we'll close this item.
Okay. Borough Manhattan, calendar numbers 24, 25, 26, 27, and 28. MSK Pavilion. CD8, calendar number 24, C240237, ZMM. Calendar number 25, N240238, ZRM. Calendar number 26, C240235, ZSM. Calendar number 25, C240236, GFM. Public hearing in the matter of applications for a zoning map and zoning text amendment, special permit, and revocable consent concerning MSK Pavilion. Notice, a public hearing is being held by the City Planning Commission in conjunction with the above ULURP actions to receive comments related to a draft environmental impact statement. This hearing is being held pursuant to the State Environmental Quality Review Act and the City Environmental Quality Review. And I'll just note we have a 10-minute team. I'll call them up right now. We have a 10-minute team consisting of Nicole Grogan, Amy Speck, Ann Locke, Laura Ardizion, Roger McLean, Justin Boyer, Robert Masters, Matthew Carmody, Shelley Friedman, Jeffrey Drebin, Salvin Vickers, and that's it.
I think you're Shelley Friedman, right?
I believe I still am. Mr. Vice Chairman. Good morning, good afternoon, Mr. Vice Chairman and members of the Commission. Shelley Friedman, Land Use Counsel to the applicant, Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center. We have a few minutes, so we're going to provide selected topics of our application, but our entire team is here and available to answer any questions you have on any aspect of the application. I do want to start by showing the Commission this graphic. The graphic is taken from the 2001 community FEIS for an application to create the large scale that is the subject of today's hearing primarily. That graphic shows in the green the proposed building at the time for the Zuckerman Research Center on 69th Street. That was considered phase 1 of the previous application. And in the blue, phase 2 was to be what was known and discussed as a new hospital building. These two buildings were to be facilitated by the creation of a large scale over MSK's 3 blocks. And the application was essentially the rezoning of the 3 mid-blocks from R8 to R9 and various large-scale tools to facilitate the distribution of floor area throughout the large scale and to facilitate the heightened setback and bulk waivers required for the Zuckerman building. This graphic was in the Commissioner's briefing books for the public hearing of September 12, 2001, and obviously was never seen by the Commission because there was no hearing on that day. In fact, City Planning's ULURP pipeline did not come back online until late October, which left us with about 60 days to complete 110 days of ULURP, as the Vice Chairman and Commissioner Benjamin probably recall. We were asked for that reason, and also because the City Planning Commission was at that point spearheading the redevelopment of Lower Manhattan, to bifurcate our application and to go forward with the phase 1 building, which was ready to go, and come back at another time on the phase 2 building, which is somewhat more theoretical massing for an approved envelope. We agreed to do that, and the Commission, in its report, recognized our voluntary withdrawal of what
what was necessary for the Phase 2 building. That would have been one of the mid-block upzonings from R8 to R9, which happens to be the upzoning that we're discussing here today, and the redistribution of floor area, which we are also discussing here today. In the Commission's report, it recognized our actions with some appreciation and indicated that when we were ready to come back, the Commission would be ready to pick up the discussion where we left off with regard to Phase 2. Today's hearing is the resumption of that discussion, and the pavilion, which you'll hear about, is that building, which we had proposed pretty much in the same form in 2001, and are now back to discuss with the Commission with regard to a new set of large scale tools, and returning to the upzoning of the southern block from R8 to R9. The new feature is a bridge that will connect from the new building back to Memorial Hospital. I will go back into these zoning actions later, but we do think that what the Commission heard in its review session was so thorough and so accurate that we're not going to go through each and every slide and every action unless the Commission has questions regarding them. Without that, I'd like to now introduce Dr. Sylvan Vickers, who is the President and CEO of Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center. Dr. Vickers.
Thank you, Shelley. Good morning, Commissioners. Good morning, particularly Vice Chair Knuckles. It's a great opportunity for me to come and speak a little bit about this proposal. A little about myself, besides having the titles you've mentioned. I'm a pancreatic cancer surgeon and also a health disparities researcher. So it's an honor to serve in this role, and it's a privilege actually to be before you today to speak about this. Memorial is a place that's uniquely committed to one mission, and that's something that makes it quite distinct, and that's the mission of ending cancer for life. Probably more significantly than that, Memorial is a unique place in the American landscape of healthcare that's in New York City that's committed to cancer care for all people in New York City, independent of income, location, and zip code. In addition, the challenge we face is that cancer rates are rising, with nearly 2 million new diagnoses in the upcoming years. And in fact, that number will approach well over 50,000 in several years in New York City. And so our preparation and need is driven by the fact that 60 people over 65, 10,000 a day are reaching that number, where is the highest incidence of cancer. So driven by baby boomers aging out to 65, the incidence of cancers at the highest point in that level, we face a significant both challenge and need to be able to provide that care to all individuals. In addition to that fact, we've been committed and grown even more so to have this cancer care really across underserved communities. Over the last year before I got here, our leadership team had worked with the leaders in Albany to really drive all New York managed Medicaid corporations to negotiate with us. And we've done that. Through that negotiations, our Medicaid visits have gone up by 65%. Since nearly 80% of all of them now can have contracts with us. That's important because there are a few places that almost on a quarterly basis innovate new care paradigms for treating cancer. Memorial is one of those places. It's having those individuals having the chance to access those clinical trials, access that novel therapy. As people get older and therapies become more innovative, it doesn't remove the complexity of giving that therapy. And for us, the clinical facility for inpatient care that we serve in is 50 years old. And it's a world that we know that we're seeing the tsunami come, and we need both the best and most significant inpatient clinical spaces to take care of the patients who we face and see with cancer with the novel yet complex therapies that they will require. And so that's the evolution of us in our commitment to move forward now with the pavilion, because we see the need coming. A renewed commitment to the citizens of New York City for this care, and a renewed commitment to still lead the world in innovative therapy, whether it's immunotherapy, precision oncology, where we have led, we still want to do that. And even more committed to those of all walks of life having access to it. So that's the drive for us toward this new pavilion, because we know it's a need and we see that challenge of all the cancer cases that are coming toward us very soon.
Questions?
Yeah, thank you for the work you do, first of all. I think it's very important, and as one of those people you mentioned, the over 65s, I particularly thank you. My question, though, is, in this new building, can you give us an idea how much of the space will be devoted to direct patient care, and how much will be devoted to research or to other activities? How much of it may be devoted to ambulatory care versus inpatient care? And what will happen to the program in the existing building?
So Jeff, I'll let Jeff speak to that, but I think you'll hear very clearly that it will be largely dedicated to inpatient care and translational research.
Thank you to the commissioners and to the...
Let me just intervene for a second, because maybe I should have. How much did you have other speakers that you wanted to present before we go into questions? Why don't we hold our questions and continue your presentation?
So let me introduce Dr. Jeff Drebin.
Please. And why don't we restore back to where we were? I think we had about 2 minutes. 3 minutes. Why don't we go back at least 3 minutes? Sorry, go ahead.
So both your speakers are going to be surgeons. Dr. Jeff Drebin is our head of surgery, and he's also a pancreatic cancer surgeon as well.
Right. Okay.
Thank you to the commissioners, and I'll be brief. Could we move the slide forward? Do you have it, Shelley? Thank you. So this just is a graphic from the CDC on cancer incidence, and it actually comes to your question about people over 65. On that graph, you can see cancer rates by age from the youngest, which is under 50, to over 70 on the far right-hand side. The light blue is now, the dark blue is what's going to happen in the future. And what you can see is it's going up across age ranges, although it's most significant for the older patients. And we know that there are 40,000 cancer cases in New York. This year, there will be 60,000 by 2050, a 50% increase. 1 out of 3 women and 1 out of 2 men will get cancer in their lifetime. So there is a epidemic, an avalanche, a tsunami. You can pick your adjective. There's a lot of cancer coming, and it's to be ready for that we're asking for this pavilion for a new facility. Every bed in the pavilion is an inpatient bed. There are operating rooms, there are treatment rooms, there are no outpatient facilities, there are no doctor's offices. Right now, there's not even a flower shop. Every bit of square footage is dedicated to providing incremental operating rooms, incremental scanners and test centers, and incremental beds, including regular beds and ICU beds, for the patient need that we see coming so that we can be ready as these incidence rates continue to rise. In order to not use up our time, I'm going to introduce Laura Artizone. Okay. Let me introduce Rob Masters, one of our designers.
Sure, yeah. Perfect. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for having us. I just wanted to spend a little bit of time talking about the impact that the clinical program that has been expressed and the oncoming need that has been discussed, how that manifests itself in the building that we're proposing. And specifically to the point about what's in the pavilion, the diagram that's on the screen is ultimately demonstrating what we have in the building. The green areas are the perioperative spaces, or the operating rooms and the interventional radiology rooms. The patient beds are up at the top. The yellow floors are clinical support spaces for lab, pharmacy, sterile supply. All of these spaces are driving clinical need on the inpatient side of the hospital and creating that incremental expansion that Dr. Drebin spoke about. The gray floors are the mechanical floors, the infrastructure required to support those spaces and to be able to provide the level of inpatient care necessary to perform surgery, to provide the recovery and the inpatient space necessary to serve the patients. That's really ultimately what's driving the height of the building, is really the clinical spaces necessary.
Why don't you continue and tell us further about the uses within this?
Sure. I could I'll briefly summarize further what the slides are indicating. What we wanted to show was what that above ceiling space for the mechanical infrastructure, for the structural requirements of the building, does to what that building stack looks like. So still the same stacking of perioperative spaces of the inpatient floors, but showing not only the gray floors, the dedicated mechanical floors, but the space above that drives the mechanical systems, the medical gas delivery systems, and also the structural systems required to provide the vibration isolation and the structure in the building. We restacked all of those spaces to show what the impact on the overall height of the building really is. So the same green space for ORs, the same blue space for beds, the yellow space for the clinical support, but all of that gray space stacked on top, the intermediate above ceiling spaces on each floor and the dedicated mechanical spaces represent over half of the overall height of the building. And that's necessary to provide the code required infrastructure necessary to support our ORs, our procedure spaces, and the inpatient beds.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Vice Chairman, it's your call. We were asked to also have some representation of the proposed building. We are asking for the approval of a zoning envelope, but we have an illustrative building. We were asked to put in some renderings. They'll only take 2 minutes to be able to provide those to you if you wish to see them now.
Okay, why don't, well, would the commission like to see the renderings?
Yes.
Proceed.
Good morning. I'm going to show you how the stacking diagram that Rob just shared manifests itself as architecture. If I can get my apologies. I'm Justin Boyer. I'm with Foster and Partners. I'm one of the architects working on the project in conjunction with Canon Design and AAI. Okay, here we go. We have a skyline view taken from the East River looking west, and you can see how the pavilion as an architectural form kind of fits into the context of the Upper East Side in juxtaposition with the Midtown skyscrapers beyond. We're trying to create something that is noble, elegant, and timeless, and it changes with the daylighting conditions over the course of the day. We do not want to create a loud building. It's essentially a machine for healing as our kind of nickname for the project. It's really been designed from the inside out to right size all of the clinical support spaces, the patient rooms, and the operating theaters. Here you see an early rendering of what the building can look like from the exterior. We elected to express the structure of the building. You can see the vertical column lines on the facade, as well as the lines of the floor plates to give it a bit of texture and to avoid a kind of sheer plane on each building elevation. We also have a kind of very subtle frit pattern on the glazing, which we can elaborate on in further slides, but that helps to unify the bulk of the tower so that our patient floors, our operating floors, and mechanical zones are all blended into one composition. It also goes a very long way into reducing our energy use because we're reducing the amount of solar heat gain to such a degree we were able to eliminate a number of mechanical equipment from our baseline project design. And in essence, we're achieving an energy use intensity rating of 125 kBGUs per square foot, which likely makes us the best performing hospital envelope in the country. In contrast, other recent buildings in the Upper East Side that are also hospitals are usually in the 200 to 250 kBGU range. So we're about half of that. We're very proud of that fact. Sorry, I went too far. Here's an image at the base of the building. You can see the two-story connector bridge on the top right. It's important to stress that the new pavilion project cannot be a standalone building. It's really part of the larger organism of the main campus. And because of that bridge and the connections below grade, we're able to leverage and expand on the capacities that exist both in the Memorial Hospital building and the Rockefeller Research Labs, as well as other adjacent buildings. At the lower two levels, we've really pulled the facade in from the outline of the property line, rather, and that allows us to give more space back to the public realm where we've created a planted and landscaped garden. We're trying to create a very serene and welcoming environment for all patients and guests arriving on site, as well as building staff, and to create a kind of very lively streetscape along York Avenue. If we were to walk forward, you would see this. We've really compressed the ground floor footprint of the building, again, in order to maximize the amount of public realm. And you can see the benches that have been designed to POP standards, as well as some of the landscaping. In the far background, you can see where we may be able to introduce artwork on the main core and part of our kind of internal drop-off drive-through, where we're bringing anyone arriving on site via car onto our site to exchange their car with a valet, and that's intended to really minimize any traffic disruptions on the major public streets. I think next we have you, Shelley.
These are the zoning actions, Mr. Vice Chairman. We can defer on those if you want to get into questions. We appreciate your patience.
Right. Okay, we'll open it up for questions now. Commissioner Benjamin.
Hi, I can re-ask my question from before. What will happen to the existing building, and how will the uses in that building change as a result of building the new building?
The existing building, Memorial Hospital, will remain, and it will remain as a clinical inpatient facility. Over time, there will be conversions from double-bedded rooms to single-bedded rooms, which is the standard now. All of the rooms in the new building will be single-bedded. So there will be a conversion over time to single-bedded rooms, but presently the intention is that Memorial Hospital will remain Memorial Hospital and provide the complete spectrum of care that it's now providing.
So you won't be shifting any of the uses other than by depopulating the in-care units. You won't be shifting any of the operating rooms or any of the other activities that would take place, that are currently taking place. They're not going into the new building. There'll only be new activities in the new building.
That is correct. The important thing to understand about the main campus is the main campus is comprised of many buildings that are providing diagnostic treatment and care, and patients are going back and forth among those buildings. In this building, they will be serviced primarily by the bridge to access the diagnostic equipment on the main campus. But there'll be no major shift to the uses in Memorial Hospital.
Okay, and if you could give us a brief idea of what the bridge looks like, the proposed bridge would look like?
I'm trying there we are. That is the bridge. The bridge has been is filed at the Department of Transportation, or revocable consent, as part of our zoning actions. As part of their procedures, we were asked to proceed to the Public Design Commission for preliminary conceptual approval, which we have in their report. They referred to the design as elegant. And that's as far as we can take it until we have defined walls for the hospital building, at which point we'll go back to DOT to continue the revocable consent process. But the structural drawings and the like have all been submitted and reviewed by revocable consent staff.
And what's the elevation at the lowest point of the bridge?
It is 70 feet, I believe. 75 feet above. 75 feet above street bed.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Other questions? Commissioner Osorio.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Thank you for the presentation. I'm wondering if you can briefly address the comments that you received from the Community Board.
The resolution from Community Board 8 was the product of a 2-year outreach. We met with them starting in 2023 and held 5 task force meetings under one of their committees that was open to the public and attended. Each of the meetings focused on a particular aspect: environmental aspect, the programmatic need, the architecture and design, the zoning actions, and the like. That resolution was actually drafted in the summer of 23. I think there was a concern at that time about the height of the building, primarily in relationship to the zoning actions. I think that we've been able to respond to them throughout, that the height is, as Rob described it, driven by the mechanical spaces required for 28 operating rooms and the accompanying beds, because that's all that's in this building is 28 ORs and the necessary beds to accommodate those 28 ORs. We're very pleased with the resolution. We think it was thoughtful. They engaged with us throughout, and we were happy to be part of that. Happy to be part of that process. If there's a particular aspect of the resolution you'd like to discuss, we'd be happy to get into that with you.
Yes, thank you very much. That's really useful. I do have a specific question, and what it has to do with the sustainable measures that are being implied. I mean, clearly, based on the DEIS, you're going above and beyond what Local Law 97 requires in terms of carbon emissions. But I would love to hear a little bit more in terms of how the plan is going to work out. I know that you're stating you're not going to be using fossil fuel-related energy, but I'm wondering, so where is the energy, where is that coming from? There's some indication of solar. I want to understand a little bit how much, and I understand what percentage of the total energy would be actually created on site. In addition, I also wanted to know, given the relationship of this building with the block, how much of that infrastructure investment is actually helping us build a little bit of an economy of scale, and how much of that is actually contributing to like the neighbors?
I'm going to refer, thank you for the question. I'm going to ask Justin Boyer from Foster and Partners to come back to respond to it.
Thank you.
Billy. So I think MSK has already committed before the introduction of the Pavilion project to fully electrifying the main campus, and that process is underway in concert with the requirements of Local Law 97 and the New York State Energy Conservation Code. As part of that, this is an all-electric building in terms of our mechanical plant. There's no energy generated directly on site via photovoltaics or other means. So it's an all-electric building, and as the New York City grid electrifies, that is our kind of path to eventual net zero operations. The project itself has yet to negotiate its power procurement agreement, so the focus at these early stages of design have been in driving down energy use as part of the base building and core and shell design through heat recovery, the use of air source heat pumps and the mechanical systems, and really improving the thermal performance of the building envelope. That's where we are at this kind of schematic DD level of design, but there's no power generated immediately on the site or on the campus, as far as I'm aware.
No, thank you. That answers my question. I'm also asking the question, well, first of all, in the spirit of responding to one of the specific points that the community board made, but also given the reputation and the trajectory of your firm, you know, this is an exciting project. What you're talking about is unprecedented. What you're hearing from me is a little bit of skepticism in terms of how quickly we're going to be able to clean the energy matrix so that the energy that you consume is 100% clean. So I appreciate your clarification there in terms of like you're working on mechanisms to secure clean energy to fully fulfill that statement.
To that end, we do a ton of research on on-site power generation. It's very difficult for a hospital typology or cancer treatment building to cover the load demand on-site, and very few projects can, even if they're commercial office spaces. Much of the buildings that claim to be net zero operational emissions are because of how they're sourcing power through the grid. We know there are state-funded projects underway that will eventually get us to a greener grid in New York City and in New York State, and this is in line with those goals. So that, like I had said, the goal was to really drive down the total amount of energy use per year in the building, given the demand. There were very few opportunities to generate enough power on site to have a meaningful impact, so MSK and the team really focused their investment on the building envelope and the mechanical design and making it as efficient as possible.
Okay, just one quick additional follow-up question. In terms of the potential sources of energy that you're exploring right now, by any chance, are you considering any type of hydrogen or green hydrogen or any sort of like potential alternative source that, you know, is my understanding is, you know, complies with the definition of clean energy in terms of greenhouse gases, but is detrimental to respiratory reductions in particulate matter and so forth, which I was really interested in. Thank you for the comment about sort of like the increasing levels of cancer, and which I would love to hear more about as well, although I recognize it's sort of like more of a tangential issue here, but help us understand, or help me understand a little bit whether, like, what are you aiming for really when you are considering alternative sources of energy?
I think that really gets into the weeds on what will MSK's ultimate power procurement agreement be with Con Edison or the local utility, and whether that's going to include hydropower or more traditional sources, right? Since there's no power generated on site, we have less control over that. It's really about the programs that are offered on an annual basis for power procurement. So it's something we've definitely taken on board and will be negotiated in the future, I think, when we get further along in the construction process.
Okay, thank you. Fair enough. One last question, though, if you don't mind. There's another point in the community board's statement about the way in which the facade, the amount of reflection and glare potentially that could be generated from it. Can you speak about that?
Sure. We, from the outset, wanted to avoid a building that was mirror-like in its impression. So by expressing the structure and incorporating this ceramic frit application, it's going to go a long way to reducing the solar heat gain, but also the experienced reflectivity of the facade. So that will capture light and reflect the atmospheric conditions in the daylight across the time of day. We're also sourcing solar control coatings. They're going to have less than 30% exterior reflectivity. Usually once you get north of 40, 50%, you get a more mirror-like building that you might see in Midtown or Lower Manhattan. So the general glazing is going to have far lower exterior reflectance than you might see around the city. That will create a more timeless building and less kind of a trendy of the moment appearance. In addition to those coatings, we also have a bird-friendly coating in conjunction with local law 15 to make the glazing more visible to migrating birds. There's a third coating that's kind of reflecting a lot of the interior temperature back into the building, so we're not losing that energy through the glazing. So there's been a lot of study and development of the exterior facade to make it extremely high-performing. The last thing I'll note is MSK did invest in triple glazed glass. So essentially you have 3 panes of glass in every window. That's a very high-performing system. That's what ultimately allowed us to eliminate an entire air handling unit and reduce our energy consumption. I don't know if I fully addressed the question, but I just wanted to speak to all the different treatments that have been incorporated into the design.
No, thank you. This is fascinating. One quick follow-up question, can I do? Thank you. I will finish with this. How much of this is actually sourced in New York?
Of the construction materials?
Of the materials for the facade and the window treatments, and et cetera. Are these supply chains? Where are these supply chains for this type of design?
So we have yet to procure any of the material or source any. We haven't awarded this scope yet. We're still early in the design phase. We are looking at North American supply chains wherever possible, not just for the facade, but for most of the interior scope, fit, and finishes. And the goal is to try and source things either within a 500-mile radius in compliance with our LEED requirements or as close as possible. We've had several conversations with the institution about sourcing as much as we can domestically and then to buy American essentially where possible.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Okay. I'll get to Commissioner Benjamin. I just wanted to ask, with regard to the site for the new building, there's no demolition required for that. That site is vacant at this point, or is it demolition?
The site is currently occupied by 2 community facilities, Group 3, not-for-profit staff dwellings. And those buildings are mixed use. They could also contain administrative offices for MSK. They go back to the 1970s. Right. They will be demolished, and the footprint of the pavilion will be built on the footprint of those 2 buildings, presently vacant and ready for demolition.
Mm-hmm. What do you project to be the construction time for the building?
Our build year for the environmental review is 2030, so we're looking at a 6-year in total construction project.
Thank you. Commissioner Benjamin.
And just following up on Ken's question, I understand that the contract employees who are currently on site are going to be moved to something on Roosevelt Island. Could you tell me a little bit about what that something is? And
Memorial Sloan Kettering has contract housing for approximately 1,300 units. Of those units, upward of 90% are occupied by trainees, including residents and fellows who are getting their training at MSK. Those units have been phased out in those 2 buildings have been phased out of service, and that's been occurring over the last 2 or 3 years. There is adequate inventory in the MSK contract housing inventory, but for about 40 units it owns. It's not in the market. It's not in the rental market. And it will be, all those currently in those 2 buildings who require new housing have been offered and placed. So there's nobody that's going out into the general real estate market here as a result of this project. To your question about Roosevelt Island, several years ago on a separate track, Memorial Sloan Kettering entered into an agreement to purchase up to 200 units in a building that's going to be built by, I believe, Related on Roosevelt Island, and it will use those units for fellows housing when they come online. But that's not what we're talking about here, because these contract employees are basically trainees and the like who are not slated necessarily for Roosevelt Island. That's part of MSK's longer strategic growth plan for its contract housing inventory.
So it's not inducing new development on Roosevelt Island. It's already committed to that development.
That is correct.
And this is not nurses' housing used for recruitment. It's mainly other medical type staff, but not recruitment nursing housing.
That is correct.
Okay.
Other questions? Commissioner Marin.
Thank you. Thank you to everyone who's presented so far. You mentioned something that's pretty interesting and lends towards the height of the building, which is the mechanical space and the mechanical plenums required for every floor. So that was very, very helpful. Thank you. You also mentioned the trend of going to single-bedded rooms. Can you talk about the size of the double-bedded rooms existing currently today, the projected size of the single-bedded rooms, and what that trend is and why? Because that also adds to the mass of the building and the size of the building.
Yes, happy to. Dr. Drebin.
So the single beds have been a standard for a number of years for hospitals. Among other reasons, as we learned during COVID, having patients with an infection in the next bed is not a good thing. And many of our patients are immunocompromised. So the goal of single beds is not just a cancer center requirement, it's a current standard for all hospitals. That being said, I'm going to let Rob come and talk about the specific square footage. They're not palatial, but they're adequate in the new building.
Thank you. As Dr. Drebin noted, single-bedded patient rooms were ultimately introduced into the National Health Code in 2010 by the Facility Guidelines Institute. They were adopted as the New York State Health Code later that year. So it is a requirement in the city, if you're building in the state and in the city, if you're building new beds, that they must be single-bedded rooms. The square footage of the rooms that we're building are ultimately just north of the minimum standard for area, but more importantly, clear floor space in the room. So the room for the patient bed and the clear space around that bed to accommodate medical equipment and the care team. So 200 square feet is a minimum clear floor area for an intensive care patient bedroom. Our patient rooms are tracking at about 203 square feet of clear floor area. So we're just above that standard. We've taken a very similar approach to the operating rooms as well, even though the level of care delivered in those rooms is significantly advanced and will accommodate technologies like robotic surgery, which is occurring on campus today, and these rooms are being designed to accommodate going forward. As it relates to the existing multi-bedded rooms, and the existing complement of bedrooms at MSK is predominantly two-bedded rooms. Those rooms generally track a square footage of about 100 square feet per patient bed in the room, and then there's additional clear space in the middle where the staff would ultimately access. So the room square footage is generally in the 230 to 240 square foot range, accommodating two patients today. So that was the standard when the building was constructed. But clearly, since that time, the medical advancements and the code requirements that follow them have advanced and brought us to current standards.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Other questions? Commissioner Osorio.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Thanks again so much for addressing the questions. I wanted to ask whether there's anything that you want to add to what the DEIS so far has identified as an avoidable impact. I'm particularly interested in the shadow analysis, and I think that specifically you've identified a potential alternative way to mitigate the impacts on the church, but I'm wondering if you can speak more generally about the results of that.
Well, the secret handbook governs how one goes about identifying these shadows, and in our case, we do cast a shadow temporarily on the church's stained glass windows. We're talking about time periods of an hour or two, but and on some days, on some months, but still it's been flagged as a significant adverse impact. We have met with the church. We will continue to meet with them. We have some ideas about how to augment the lost light attributable. These windows are not being blocked. It's simply a diminishment of sunlight. So we will be working with them. There are a number of tools in the toolbox for making that situation right. It'll basically be up to the church whether they want to proceed with it or not, but we are going to make a strong effort, and that will be reported in full in the final environmental impact statement.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions for the team? Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, Commissioners.
Do we have other speakers on this item?
Yes, and I'll just note, Nicole Grogan and Amy Speck were called out as applicant teams. They're actually members of the public, so we'll call their names during the public testimony. Okay, our first speaker from the public is Zainab Turan on Zoom.
Okay.
We're going to promote.
Good afternoon, Vice Chair and
Good
Commissioners.
afternoon.
My
Good
name is
afternoon.
Zainab Turan, speaking on behalf of Friends of the Upper East Side, an organization that has worked to preserve architectural history, livability, and sense of place of the Upper East Side over 40 years. Friends supports MSK's important mission, but we have significant concerns about the proposed pavilion's height and bulk and its impact on neighborhood character and livability. And we think that MSK could achieve its goals with a more contextual building that remains in conversation with its neighbors. First, the proposal projects an expansion of service, 28 operating rooms and 206 patient beds with a staggering 903,000 square foot floor area. Is there really justification for this massive expansion of floor area, especially as cancer care is reported as moving towards outpatient facilities and medication? In addition, seen through an equity lens, MSK could bring their world-renowned cancer care to underdeserved New Yorkers by instead building satellite medical facilities in places such as places lacking such services, for instance, Staten Island, which has some of the highest cancer rates in the city. Furthermore, the proposed almost 600-foot tall pavilion with only 30 stories would be a massive tower rising directly from the sidewalk with no setbacks, a throwback to pre-zoning regulation building form, soaring above even the tall medical towers further along York Avenue. From a zoning and land use perspective, the massive upzoning and amendments required before such could be built would send a troubling signal to developers about what is permissible in Upper East Side and with respect to institutional expansion across the city. We are also concerned about the broad-ranging environmental ramifications from impacts on transportation, traffic, neighborhood character, and the disruptions of a projected 6-year construction. A tower or such a massive tower would destroy the carefully calibrated balance in the surrounding area created by the tenement buildings across the street, a historic church, a school, and community spaces, including St. Catherine's Park, the only major open space in the area. All of these were built with a direct emphasis on human-scale development and community-oriented planning, which would be appended by this massively outsized tower. At almost 600 feet, the MSK Pavilion is said to be the tallest hospital building in New York City, well over 100 feet taller than the second tallest medical tower, MSK's David A. Koch Center on 74th Street. Friends urges the Department of City Planning to carefully consider the potential negative impacts of this current proposal on the livability and life quality of the neighboring community, and to urge MSK to revise its plans to ensure a project with a significant height reduction and an appropriate setback on the First Avenue side that integrates harmoniously with our existing community. Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you. Questions? Thank you.
Okay. Our next speaker is Nathaniel Siegel in person.
Just going to take me a moment to set up. Bear with me. I want everybody to be able to see. Okay. So, in my presentation, once I start, I'm going to bring the whole thing down to a given scale. And I may, in order not to, sorry, I'm not trying to get close to anybody, but in order to do that, I don't got it. There. Good now? Yeah. You got it. That's good. This part. This is And almost ready. Garage is here. Card. This is the oxygen tank. Oxygen tank, oxygen card. Garage entry. Ambulance entry. Parking. I'm ready. There we go. I noticed the way the camera is set up, so with your permission, I'm just going to turn the mic, and I'm going to go through the presentation real quick.
Just speak into the microphone.
Yeah, I'll speak into the mic. Thank you, commissioners, for allowing me this time to present. I am a resident of this neighborhood for over 30 years.
What is your name, sir?
My name is Nathaniel. I live on East 66th Street. I live in the buildings that you see there. There's a block of 10 5-story walk-ups. These are all to scale. That is what a 6-floor walk-up looks like. So the scale for this drawing is that little red figure is a 6-foot person, and each of those floors is a 10-foot floor. So just picture a typical, 5-story walk-up. That entire block is 547 housing units. What you're seeing running across, when you were looking at the mechanicals for the building and the stacking, the first 3 levels of mechanicals will be expelling the heat and the energy when they, quote unquote, flush out and clean the air in the building for those 28 operating rooms. And it just happens to align with the height of those 5th floor walk-ups. So when you look at the bands that they show with those first 3 levels above the entrance plaza, those are a 66-foot high HVAC unit that's blowing down on the residences. The little white exhibit you see on the side there is something called an oxygen farm. If you go to East 67th Street, you'll see that the Memorial Sloan Kettering requires oxygen, nitrogen, and other chemicals for what they do. In the oxygen farm, you have an oxygen tank and a nitrogen tank, and it needs to be refilled repeatedly. The federal guidelines for that is it cannot be within 50 feet of a combustible material. In the design that you've been shown and it's been submitted, it runs parallel to the entrance to a parking garage where cars line up constantly. So you have cars within feet of a combustible material. You'll also look, if you go to 67th Street, the oxygen farm that's located there is at a remove from their building, and it's set back. In the designs you've been shown, there is no setback. It is under the eaves of this building. And because you're the Department of City Planning, you know how curtain wall and cement works. And so there's a potential for fire. I have more comments about the open space, and I'd be happy to share those. But I think the most crucial thing is the scale to the neighborhood.
Thank you. Questions for
Nathaniel.
Mr. Nathaniel. Thank you, sir.
Wait, I'm sorry.
Wait a minute. You have a question?
Can you expand a bit more about, when you're talking about the combustible materials?
So one of the things that's interesting to me about the environmental, I'm sorry, I'm dry mouth because I don't have water in here and I'm trying to keep it short. So one of the things that interests me in the draft environmental impact statement is always talking about things like, was there a gas tank in the basement before you built this building? But it doesn't talk about the use. And as we go forward with the city of yes, and we talk about putting huge buildings next to small buildings, we have to think about what is that building going to be. So just as earlier you said, you know, this is going to be a grocery store. And one of the things you're really alluding to is there's going to be food and rats and, you know, things like that. Well, this, because it's a cancer hospital, requires all these chemicals. These aren't chemicals you're going to find during the one-year demolition. These are chemicals they use daily and get refilled daily. There's a really expensive condo on the corner of 67th Street that has a state-of-the-art building. Those people can't sleep once a week as they refill their existing chemicals to do the work they do. They're now shifting all of that to our block, but it's not, as I said, they're not shifting it, it's additional. But what I'm fascinated about is as they're presenting this as additional, they have survey markings on their existing buildings. And what I'm afraid of is that the applicant is going to do what they did in 2001. They were able to tear down a church, a rectory, and put up a 400-foot research tower. And then the next building they put up in the neighborhood was on 2nd Avenue, which is the Breast Cancer Center. And when they notified the community, they put AOR, no community review. We can build up to 400 feet without any input. And what I'm afraid of with this is you're giving them 600 feet, and they're looking to tear down that whole block between York Avenue and 1st Avenue. And when we talk about shade and darkness, you've got the area behind the public school. The church is beyond the school. The playground will be in darkness. Did I answer your question? I'm sorry.
Of course, thank you. That was very clear. Sorry, thank you. It was very clear. Is anyone else have any questions?
Well, yeah, we do. Are you done?
So I'm done.
Okay. Commissioner Benjamin.
Yes, I was wondering if you could provide us with
Walk you through it?
in a form that
I know.
we can take with us and study.
I'm going to leave it with you.
I took
I'm serious.
some pictures.
I'm serious.
Yeah, I took some pictures that
I have 2 copies of it. But the most important part to see is this is the true distance of the street.
Oh, got it. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
But like I could put it on a piece of paper. It doesn't, I have it on white paper. Yes, I'll give you one on white paper.
Thank you. And in terms of your concerns about I just want to make sure I understand your concern about if these approvals are granted, which would include amending the restrictive declaration and would limit the building to that which is approved. That's the only building they could take to the buildings department. They couldn't.
Well, I believe that's the way they framed it, but what I'm more concerned about is this. They are doing a rezoning. You asked who's in it and whether the building had already been demolished. What there is an empty building for doctors. That's how it was used, and it was zoned residential. You are changing the use of an entire avenue to effectively a commercial use. This is going to be a hospital, 24/7, and what you're also seeing is that there's an ambulance bay on the East 66th Street side. To date, 2 years, and we've never seen a street-level elevation from 66th Street. You won't find it anywhere in this packet. And that's, to me, speaks volumes. Why aren't they sharing with the immediate neighbors what the street-level view will be?
Okay. Thank you very much.
All right. Other questions for the speaker? Thank you, sir.
Can I say one thing about the open space? It'll take 2 seconds.
No, you got 3 minutes. You can submit in writing anything you want to pertaining to this matter.
Sure. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay.
Do we have other
yes,
speakers?
we do have other speakers. Our next speaker is going to be Anat Rosenberg on Zoom, so I'll go ahead and promote.
All right.
Matt, you should be able to unmute.
Hi. Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you so much for the opportunity to speak before you. Just as a side note, this has been fascinating just to watch sort of the whole process. So my name is Anat Rosenberg. Like Nathaniel, I'm also a resident of East 66th Street, although I live a little bit further up between First and York. My children, who are 7 and 10 years old, both attend PS 183, which is separated from the proposed construction site by one research building. And so as Nathaniel mentioned, you know, the ambulance bay, the oxygen farm, all of those things that are sort of concern are basically like several feet away from the kids' school. This is an elementary school that serves about 500 kids from pre-K through 5th grade. I guess what I wanted to say is that, you know, as the daughter of a retired surgical oncologist, I recognize and appreciate the need for world-class cancer care and treatment now and also into the future. At the same time, you know, as a parent whose kids attend the school, I'm gravely concerned about both the demolition as well as the construction of the new site and the height of it specifically, and also the length of the construction. 6 years means that kids who are going into pre-K now will be affected by this construction for nearly their entire time at PS 183. And this is also, you know, going to affect students who have already had learning disruptions from the pandemic. I'm not an expert on these matters, but I did, you know, glance at the draft environmental impact statement, and I was kind of shocked to see how little the school was actually mentioned. Even in terms of the shadows issue, it really only relates to the church, which is on the corner of First Avenue, but the school is between this building or proposed building and the church. The schoolyard on East 67th Street, which is the only outdoor space where these kids play during the day, will have a shadow cast on it while they have recess. You know, so that's not to mention all the issues in terms of noise, construction, potential toxins that are released during demolition in terms of asbestos or lead-based paint because the building is from the 70s. So, you know, I guess my point is that I feel like Nathaniel was saying there needs to be a balance between what's good for MSK and its patients and its stakeholders and what's good for the surrounding community that this building is supposed to be in. You know, it's a residential neighborhood with lots of children. And like I said, my main concern is really about the school. You know, the kids line up to go into the school, both from York and First Avenues. So I just, you know, I would like for MSK to really engage the school more than it has up until now. And just very quickly, I just wanted to say that in terms of the community board resolution, the community board resolution said that they would approve the rezoning, but
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. Your time is up. You, of course, may submit any additional comments you have in writing. Let me see if there are questions. There are none. Thank you for your testimony. Next speaker.
Our next speaker is Elliot Nirenberg.
Okay.
Promoting in Zoom.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioners. Good afternoon. My name is Elliot Ehrenberg. Memorial Sloan Kettering saved my life, and I proudly support MSK's proposed pavilion building to build a new cancer center on its East Side main campus. In April of 2017, I was diagnosed with stage 4 melanoma, which is a serious form of skin cancer. It metastasized in my spine, my ribs, my pelvis, and my... At that time, of course, I was terrified, consumed with hopelessness. With no idea where to turn for help, I was guided to MSK by trusted friends, many of whom were doctors. When I first met with my oncologist, Dr. Paul Chapman, I felt like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. He spent 2 full hours with me during the initial consultation, When I asked him how can he afford to spend that much time with me, he said that every patient deserves respect. He made me feel like a human being and not just another case in his office. Dr. Chapman explained to me that given the then recent advancements in immunotherapy treatments for melanoma, that I had a 70% chance of survival. I finally felt there was hope. The sense of compassion I felt from Dr. Chapman is present everywhere at MSK, from the receptionists who get to know your name at the front desk to my nurses. I was treated with the utmost care and warmth. I really felt I was treated as part of their family. Today, I'm proud to say I'm cancer-free. I also can say firsthand that if it wasn't for the care and treatment I received at MSK, I would not be here today, and I know I'm not alone. Building a new pavilion facility will allow MSK to save more lives like mine today and in the future. It will ensure that the next generation of cancer patients can walk into MSK's doors and feel the same sense of relief and hope that I did. It's for this reason and for the thousands of cancer patients now and in the future and their families in all of our communities, and I live in Manhattan, that I'm proud to support MSK. I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Ehrenberg. Questions? Thank you. Next speaker.
Okay, next we'll have Kate Niehaus, who's on Zoom.
Good afternoon. My name is Kate.
Good afternoon.
My name is Kate Niehaus, and I live a short walk from MSK. I have made that walk many, many times. I was first diagnosed with cancer 30 years ago, and since then, I've been treated a total of 4 times with 3 different types of cancer. MSK is an amazing place, a world-class institution that's right in my Upper East Side neighborhood. I think of it as the Cancer Brain Trust, and I feel so lucky to have MSK so close to me. Like so many others, I've come to rely on MSK for unmatched cancer care. But cancer is increasing, and additional space is needed to accommodate the increased number of patients that MSK will be required to treat. Additional operating rooms, patient beds, and space for advanced clinical intervention are needed. Everyone should be afforded the opportunity to receive the very best cancer care available. That care is at MSK. I strongly believe that the pavilion will ensure that MSK has what it needs to continue providing world-class cancer care to every New Yorker who needs it. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions from Ms. Niehaus? Thank you.
Okay, next in Zoom, we have Virginia Wettlaufer. And I'll just note, I do not see Virginia Wettlaufer in the Zoom room.
Okay.
So we'll move on to, oh, I see a hand up. That might be Virginia. Virginia, you should be able to unmute. Virginia?
Yes.
We can hear you.
Wettlaufer?
Yes.
Okay. You can testify. You have up to 3 minutes.
Hi, my name is Virginia Wettlaufer Tomlinson, and I have been a resident of New York City for the last 21 years. Over a decade ago, I was a healthy, successful 31-year-old New Yorker when I was diagnosed with triple positive stage 3 breast cancer. My family was in Buffalo. My young adult life was in New York City, and the questions of where to be treated and cared for became real. Even with these challenges, my family and I had no doubt Memorial Sloan Kettering was the right choice. My team and I crafted a plan to attack my cancer, a plan that unfortunately meant I would never be able to carry a baby. The chemo would cause irreversible damage to my eggs that would make carrying a pregnancy impossible. My life was changing before my eyes. At this traumatic moment, MSK became my safe haven. In January of 2013, after radiation treatment at the main campus, I was informed by one of the nurses that my doctor needed to see me. I entered an exam room to find it full of rose petals and my now husband down on his knee saying, "This place saved your life. You are the love of my life. Will you marry me?" 10 years later, my husband and I have 2 beautiful children born via gestational carrier, and I reside blocks away from MSK on the Upper East Side. I spend much of my time volunteering throughout the various MSK facilities, talking to patients and helping navigate the complexities of processing their life changes. The message I've taken away from my journey was to always make someone else's tomorrow better than my yesterday. It is with that affirmation that I wholeheartedly support MSK's proposed new pavilion to ensure the next generation of patients receive the same quality of cancer care that I did, if not better. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen.
Thank you. Questions? Thank you. Next speaker.
Okay, next speaker is Kieran Healy on Zoom. And we're promoting.
Hi there, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Kieran Healy. I am here today to tell you about how MSK saved my life and why I proudly support MSK's new cancer care pavilion. When I was diagnosed with stage 4 non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, MSK saved my life with expert science, chemotherapy, and just plain and simple. I still remember the care shown by MSK employees while I was in treatment. I was treated with compassion from the doctors down to the staff bringing my food, and particularly all the nurses, and that gave me confidence to take on cancer without fear. If I could send every person with cancer to MSK for their treatment, I would, and that's why I support MSK's Pavilion project. This new facility will ensure that people diagnosed can walk into MSK's doors and experience the same level of care and compassion that I did. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Don't see any questions.
Okay. Our next speaker is Irene Joyce Dematulak on Zoom.
Hi, hello.
Hello.
Can you hear me? Hi, good
I
afternoon.
can.
Perfect. All right. Hello, my name is Irene Dematulak, and I'm here to share Memorial Sloan Kettering's personal impact on my life and voice my support in favor of the MSK Pavilion. In March 2020, at the onset of this citywide lockdown, I began my treatment for stage 2B osteosarcoma, which consisted of a total of six-week cycles of chemotherapy and major surgeries, including total knee replacement and a partial femur replacement. Spending day in and day out in MSK on the pediatric floor as a 25-year-old young adult had the potential to be very isolating, especially in the midst of COVID. My MSK team became my family and provided my parents and I whatever support we needed. As a native New Yorker from Brooklyn with restricted mobility at the time, MSK's central Manhattan location and convenient location for every treatment and diagnostic measure I needed brought immense relief to me and my family. Both my team and the facility itself showed me as a patient that I was, without a doubt, first in their minds. Now, 3 years into my survivorship, I continue to cherish the time my nurses and medical team spent with me just to laugh and talk about shows we were binging and dreams about plans after COVID.
Unknown caller.
Sorry.
It's all right. I hope that wasn't me.
No, it was me.
Okay. Yeah, and talk about dreams we had after COVID. MSK's professional expertise and personal care contributes greatly to who I am today. MSK's pavilion will allow more people to receive the same quality of personal care and just care and quality care that I did. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. I see no questions.
Okay, our next speaker is Mary Pat Sumnovich, who is calling in. So we'll allow her to talk. Mary Pat, you should be able to unmute in Zoom. Mary Pat, we see the phone icon is unmuted. You should be able to proceed. Mary Pat, you should be able to proceed. I'll try calling in Mary Pat, but we can move on to the next speaker for the meantime.
Okay.
Okay, next speaker, Marcos Ramirez, who is in Zoom. I do not see the name Marcos Ramirez in Zoom. Okay, the next speaker will be Nicole Grogan on Zoom. I do see Nicole, we'll permit.
Good afternoon. My name is Nicole Grogan, and I've lived in Yorkville for more than 25 years. I sincerely appreciate the opportunity to speak with you all on the importance of Memorial Sloan Kettering and their new pavilion on the Upper East Side. I was diagnosed with breast cancer at age 44. At the time, I was a busy mom and wife to my 10-year-old son, my husband Jim, active in my community and working full-time. My world immediately stopped, and I contacted MSK because I knew they would develop a plan that would give me the best odds of survival. My treatment over 10 months was comprehensive and included not only multiple surgeries, chemotherapy, and radiation, but also included social services and the opportunity to participate in groundbreaking research studies, such as the effectiveness of exercise during chemotherapy. All of this happened at MSK in Manhattan. Their care was exceptional because they have the research, cutting-edge treatment, and a culture of treating the whole person and their specific needs. Fast forward nearly 7 years from my diagnosis, I am living a healthy, full life with my husband, my teenage son, and family, and we are eternally grateful for the care that we received at MSK in Manhattan. As a patient and a caregiver to my mother, who was also treated at MSK Manhattan for lung cancer, I have seen firsthand how intense cancer treatment can be. The need for high-quality cancer care is urgent, and it is not something that can be scheduled for a more convenient time. I do not see any negative residential impacts by MSK's plan. The new MSK Pavilion is absolutely essential, as it will allow for more patients to receive the exceptional care that I had the benefit from. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you. Any questions for the speaker? Thank you.
Okay, I'll just note we have been joined by Mary Pat via the phone again. Mary Pat, you should be able to unmute in Zoom on the phone.
Good afternoon. Thank you.
Good afternoon.
Thank you for the second opportunity to speak to you today. on the importance of Memorial Sloan Kettering. I moved to the Upper East Side about 30 years ago, and my husband and I currently reside on York Avenue, about 20 blocks north of MSK's main campus. My relationship with MSK started in 1999 as I began volunteering at the hospital every night. For more than 18 years, I saw the amazing work of MSK firsthand among the pediatric patients and their families whom I was privileged to serve. I witnessed the extraordinary dedication and professional compassion of the nurses and doctors and the desire of each and every MSK employee to make the awful experience of pediatric cancer better for these children. I also witnessed this sense of dedication and compassion firsthand as a caregiver for my beloved father. My dad was the center of our large family. He was healthy and vibrant as could be. We thought him invincible until a very rare and aggressive cancer struck 4 years ago. Immediately, he was lucky to begin treatment at MSK and spent the next 3 months in and out of the hospital. As a family, we once again saw the extraordinary compassion and dedication of the nurses, doctors, and staff, a fact which my father often complimented them on throughout his care. In less than 90 days after his diagnosis, my family and I were gathered as he began to decline. The ICU doctors and nurses did everything possible to make this difficult time easier for all of us, paying particular attention to my grieving mother. We had the hard privilege of holding my father's hands and one another as he passed away. My father's death left a huge hole in our hearts, but he is now at peace, and so are we, knowing that we and Memorial Sloan Kettering did all we could for my beloved dad. We support Memorial Sloan Kettering and their pursuit of the pavilion so that all families in their toughest battles can experience the same care that my family was afforded. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for your testimony. Next speaker.
Okay, next speaker is going to be Amy Speck on Zoom. And it looks like Amy has left the Zoom room. We'll do one last call for Amy Speck and Marcus Ramirez in Zoom, but I do not see those names.
All righty. Are there any further speakers, Madam Secretary?
No, Vice Chair.
All right. Is there anyone else present who would like to speak on this item today?
We have one speaker. Okay.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for this opportunity. My name is Laura, and I'm a nurse.
You want to? Yeah.
Okay, all right. Good afternoon, and thank you so much for this opportunity. My name is Laura Artizone, and I'm a nurse. I'm a Roosevelt Island resident, and I'm the Clinical Director of Nurse Anesthesia Services at Memorial Sloan Kettering, which is a team of specialized advanced trained nurses who help keep you safe during anesthesia. It was so powerful to listen to all those patient stories, and this is why we do this. Having spent the last 20 years of my career at MSK, I'm a clinician on the front line fighting against cancer. But over the past 20 years, I've seen a change in patients we're treating every day. There are simply more patients, younger patients, and patients who require more advanced cancer care. When you combine the increasing acuity that Dr. Drebin, our chairman of surgery, talked about, with the expected volume of increasing cases over the years, the result is that our current facility is simply not equipped for the volume of patients nor the complexity of the care that they need and procedures in the future. There are multiple nursing colleagues, including myself, on the design team. We've worked to assure that every aspect of this new pavilion will provide a more cohesive and supportive care model for our patient populations and their families. When you're treating cancer, every second counts, and especially when it comes to acute care for very sick patients. It's critical that all the resources are close together, which is one of the many reasons why it's impossible for the new pavilion to be somewhere else or in another borough, anywhere other than right here on our main campus, and why the bridge linking the patient floors between the older building and the new building is critical. With the pavilion as part of our main campus on York Avenue, we won't have to recreate patient services. They can be linked to our in-house blood bank, our ICU care, our lab resources, our radiation oncology treatments. All these are within close proximity. It ensures that our patients can still access groundbreaking cell therapies, advanced imaging, and are situated at main campus, and that can't be replicated in other places. At the same time, their families will have access to the support and services that they need that are still at main campus. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Questions for the speaker? Thank you very much. Madam Secretary, is there anyone else present who would like to speak on this item?
I do not have any other speakers on this item.
No other?
No other speakers.
All right. Before I close the hearing, then I want to state that the record on this matter will remain open through Monday, July 8th at 5 p.m. To receive written comments on the DEIS, the Draft Environmental Impact Statement. If there are no further speakers, the hearing is closed. Madam Secretary, do we have any other business before us today?
You had your hand up. Oh, I thought I saw your hand up. Sorry. No other business before the commission today, but I do have some public information to share.
Please.
For those who are unable to or did not wish to testify, you can submit written testimony online by selecting this hearing on the upcoming meetings page on the NYC Engage portal, through DCP's website, or by mailing your comments to City Planning Commission, Calendar Information Office, 120 Broadway, 31st floor, New York, New York, 10271.
I thank you. There's no other business before us. This meeting is adjourned.
Time is 2:01 p.m. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.